All right. All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Select Board on Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. One member of this public body or other staff is present at the location to ensure the public can participate if desired. Please note that while we strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email at selectboard@hartford-vt.org. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by a roll call vote in accordance with the law. So required by the open meeting law, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting and have those members attending remotely identify themselves to ensure that they can hear and be heard throughout the meeting. Okay, Lanny?
Lanny Collins here.
Rocket?
Rocket here.
Allie?
Allie's here.
Mary?
Mary's here.
Dan?
I'm here. I can hear you, and I'm attending remotely.
All right, thank you, Dan. And Kim?
Here.
And I am also here. The first item tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to?
Sorry, Mike, I should note that I didn't state my name, so Dan Fraser.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Good, Rocket. I defer to Rocket.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have no liquor control business, no cannabis business. Order of agenda, I imagine we'll probably look for a break after the budget presentations. And so we'll start with public comment. So we'll start with people in the room. If anyone would like to comment, please come up to the microphone. Identify yourself and your town or village of residence. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Please address the select board as a whole and refrain from any personal attacks. Anyone in the room? Go ahead.
So my name is Aaron Warner, and I'm a resident here in White River. I own 2 businesses. I also do part-time journalism, investigative journalism. If you could give me just a second to preface my comment. I just want to say that I reached out to the entire board to talk with you guys about this privately, and I was given an email response from Mary saying that you guys didn't want to, so I'm going to make this comment publicly. And this is about the DEI involvement, the town of Hartford's involvement with DEI. I'm ready. I'll try not to speak too quickly. Do you like to be lied to? I don't think any of us like to be lied to, especially by our government or media. However, the lying has become pathological to the point both government and media are at all-time lows in terms of the trust they have with the American people. Why is that? Recently, I watched a documentary film titled The Greatest Lie Ever Sold, which is an expose of the organization Black Lives Matter. It's important to note the maker of the film is a Black woman. She made the film because she discovered the fraudulent nature of its organizers. Among the things she cites in the film, BLM raised $90 million, and almost none of it went to uplift Black communities. George Floyd, whose death was used by BLM to justify nationwide riots and over $1 billion in property damage, not only had 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his body, which is why he couldn't breathe, BLM never used any of the money they raised to help cover the cost of his funeral, nor settle his estate. More than one BLM director in a major city has since resigned over the dishonesty of its leaders. Black Lives Matter is an almost sacrosanct term now because, of course, Black Lives Matter. When I first heard the phrase, I was shocked because as a rational adult, I can't imagine who needed to be told Black Lives Matter. Personally, if you're an adult in America and need to be reminded Black Lives Matter, you're a pathetic human being. Likewise, if you feel it's your place to tell other adults Black Lives Matter, you're equally ridiculous. This is grade school level messaging, which is exactly the point. Black Lives Matter is a type of doublespeak where the apparent meaning is different from the hidden meaning. Why do I say this? This is a Marxist tactic. We know because Patrice Cullors, one of the co-founders of BLM, is on video stating, "We are trained Marxists." As the BLM riots burned down my home city of Portland, Oregon, I had to find out what was going on with this group. So I went to their website. What I found in their mission statement was stunning. It was pure Marxism. It called for all 7 planks of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, among which are abolition of private property, abolition of the nation state, abolition of religion, abolition of inheritance, and abolition of the nuclear family. They've since taken these statements down due to backlash, which is another lie. They won't even stand behind their true intent. Another example of DEI in practice comes just one town south of us in Windsor, where the principal was fired for stating her private social media account, "All lives matter." This is her right of free speech to state, especially in private. However, the Marxists on the school board had her fired for the simple statement, "All lives matter." Does anyone disagree? Do all lives not matter? Vermont courts agreed and awarded her $650,000 in damages, along with another $225,000 to cover her legal fees. That's almost $1 million the town was forced to pay for the abuse of power. Is the town of Hartford prepared to face similar lawsuits when someone who either misuses or refuses to use a pronoun gets fired from creating a hostile work environment, as your DEI training implied? Here are some other DEI $650,000 in damages, along with another 200 administrators in Carmel, Indiana confessed on. That's almost $1 million the town was raised there on students' power, despite telling parents they weren't. They lied. A town manager in Wisconsin issued a statement saying the colors red and green and any religious Christmas decorations would not be permitted in the town building because it's not inclusive. So rather than include decorations specifically related to the holiday, she wants to exclude them. How is that inclusive? It's not, it's a lie. These people are often called social justice warriors. It's not about justice, though. It's an ideology that hides itself as a social theory, but is in fact a religion. Why do I say that? Because Marx said that. The Communist Manifesto was originally to be titled The Communist Statement of Faith, until his comrade Engels suggested it would expose their true aim. In other words, they lied. If you're still not convinced, ask the authors of Critical Race Theory and Introduction. I have the book. In the first edition, they state they met to write the book at a convent in Madison, Wisconsin, surrounded by crucifixes, an odd place for a bunch of Marxists to meet, end quote. I suppose we should take their word for it. The second edition removed that passage. Yet another lie. Lastly, the concept of white privilege. Have any of you heard this? Have you heard of white privilege? It's the idea tied to America's history that white people have created systemic privileges, thus systemic racism. It's an interesting theory. It sounds truly unique, but can anyone tell me where the Han people live in the world? Anybody know where the Han people live?
Yes.
Where?
I think that was a rhetorical
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Where do they live, Mary?
They're in the northern part of China.
Right. They're the most abundant population in China, just like white people, the most abundant people in America. And one of the key pillars to Mao's Cultural Revolution, for those of you who haven't studied history, was the concept of Han privilege, just like white privilege. That was in the 1950s, and Mao was a Marxist. I'm almost done. So here it is. DEI uses terms we can all support and should support: diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, that's not how it's practiced, which is the big lie. If the town intends to pursue this type of teaching, I hope it's prepared to deal with the lies and potentially the lawsuits that come with it.
Okay. Any other public comment in the room?
Mr. Chair, may I respond? Quick note. Aaron, I just want to let you know, I'm seeing your email in my junk just now. So I've never.
That's where most of my stuff is.
It's possible that I don't know. May have
Yeah, I don't recall getting it. Maybe it's in the
So-
spam folder.
Anyway, so I apologize for the non-response, but.
Okay, any other comment in the room? Okay, how about Zoom?
One hand up so far. Marie Alvin.
Marie?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Marie Elvin from Hartford Avenue.
That's something we can certainly consider. John, do we have any update, do you know, from DPW? I know last time they were waiting until the foliage died off to go look at the fence over there.
I have not heard anything further. I can talk with Brian and get back to you on the next meeting.
Okay, so Marie, well, the town manager will talk to the director of public works and we should have some info for you the next
All
meeting.
right, great. And then putting that on the budget, I guess, for the camera.
Okay.
I'd like a flashing crosswalk too, but I don't want to push it too much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Any other Zoom comments?
Nope. Oh, what? Another hand just went up.
Okay.
Michelle Boleski.
Hello, Michelle.
Hey there, Michelle Blesky, Hartford resident. I have a question. We're gonna do a follow-up study on Hartford Avenue, for speeding. Because the original study was done, I believe, when school was out. And it was around, 4th of July or July. So maybe people were out of town so I'm just wondering where when is that gonna happen? Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I do know the initial study was done and it was done when the school wasn't in session. Do we know when, looking at the chief of police?
It hasn't been done yet.
Okay,
It was scheduled for October, but I believe the court may be put away for winterized. I will certainly.
okay. All right, well, we'll find out some more for you, Michelle. Thank you. Rocket?
Just a note on that, Chief. Would we expect, I mean, maybe you have no answer, but would we expect speeding to go up or down with school traffic, school being in session? I can't imagine the parents are going that much faster than the speed limit to get their kids to school. But I also could imagine that the increased traffic would actually slow down the average pace of traffic. Do you have any sense on that?
I really don't.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Rocket makes a good point with the added traffic. You may see some increased speeds slightly more. We.
Any others in town?
Yep.
Okay.
Heidi Duto, go ahead.
Heidi?
Hi, Heidi Duto, White River Junction, Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to touch on what Marie was speaking to. I believe it's been over a year and there were supposed to be some grants we were looking into about lighting. Could maybe Gail touch on that? I see Gail sitting there. Have any grants been looked into for lighting in that parking ride since it's a town-owned parking ride?
Well, John or Gail, if you have any info.
I don't.
So Dana Clausen, he's the environmental
Mike,
sustainability court.
Mike,
Don't stand up here. Dana Clausen is the environmental.
They're wearing guns.
sustainability
All right, let's hear from
Coordinator.
Gail.
And he was checking into grants and I haven't received any updates from him on them. So maybe John, you can add that on your list of things to
Sure
follow
thing.
up with him on.
Yep.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you very much, Gail.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Any other hands?
I think Marie's hand is back up again. It went down and it's back up.
Marie, did you put your hand back up?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to maybe in the budget, a couple of electric charging stations over there at the park and ride as well, either 2 or 4 electric. So vehicles could charge their car there. That seems to be the step moving forward in the direction, and wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very good idea. Any other hands on Zoom?
There are no other hands up at the moment.
All right, so that'll end public comment. We'll do select board comments and announcements. Kim, if you want to kick us off? If you haven't been.
No, other than to say to our town manager, I appreciate your response. I've had a lot of questions lately and I often try not to take up too much time in meetings with them, and that please know that for every question I ask, there's probably 5 or 10 that I refrain from. So I appreciate your response and gathering information.
I appreciate it. It's not always that I'll know the answer because a lot of these questions had to do with time before I came to Hartford, but it has proven a good learning opportunity for me.
Very good. Dan, do you have any comment?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mary?
I'm good also.
Allie?
None for me.
Rocket?
John, your haircut looks nice. I want to
Thank
thank the
you.
staff for being here. I think I want to revisit this idea that I mentioned earlier, that I know as we go into budgeting, it's a busy time for us. But as we have a conversation tonight about policy and policies, also just sort of processing the select board and how we can be efficient. And I'm always cognizant of that, especially when staff are here, because I know you guys work full days and some of you are traveling from very far. So I just want to encourage my select board members to keep that in mind, and I will try to reach out to everyone for feedback as to how we could create procedural improvements. So honor to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Rocket. Lynn?
I have a lot to say, but it's not the place to say it, so that's it.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I know it's a day early, but I want to wish everyone in the Upper Valley a happy Jersey Mike's Day tomorrow. Okay.
Wait a minute. How's that something realistic like Veterans Day? That we just passed?
Have you been following the
Okay.
the news on Jersey Mike's?
Jersey Mike's is nothing.
Okay.
How many
we're
Americans
gonna go
serve their
to
country?
appointments. We're going to consider the appointment of Jenifer Durgin to the Hartford Climate Action Steering Team for a 3-year term beginning November 14th, 2023 and ending November 13th, 2026. Jenifer available. Okay, let's bring her over.
I'm here. Yes.
Hi, Jenifer.
Hello.
So generally, we would just ask you to identify yourself and your town and village of residence and tell us your interest in being on the Climate Action Steering Team.
Sure. I'm Jenifer Durgin. I live in the village of Wilder, just up from White River Junction, and the past year I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, and just really interested in practical solutions for how to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as a town.
Do you have any questions for them? Lanny?
Thank you, Jenifer. Appreciate you applying for this. You mentioned practical solutions with the town of Hartford. What do you see as one major practical solution that we could implement in the town of Hartford?
Well, I had the opportunity, thanks to Dana Clausen inviting me to observe the last climate action steering team meeting. And, one of the things they talked about was like styrofoam, like how can we collect styrofoam and get it recycled? Like, what about plastic films? Like, is there a way we can collect the plastic films? Because there's a company that takes those and turns them into decking. And so those were kind of some of what was discussed. But I think, as a newer member of the team, I would just be looking towards the more experienced members and also the climate action plan for the town of Hartford. And, looking towards Dana for what priorities he sees. So I'm kind of just looking to be another hand to help execute things.
Thank you for your response.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. No.
No, go ahead.
Jenifer, thank you for your application. I think that the energy coordinator, the sustainable energy coordinator, the right title, environmental sustainability coordinator, Dana Clausen has said that potentially at the end of this calendar year or the beginning of next, that we'll kind of revisit. The steering committee was appointed by the former town manager and wasn't charged by the select board. So I think they're looking at maybe reorganizing and just potentially coming back to be reformatted a little bit. And that might coincide also with if we do end up having another session with Dominic Cloud around our committee makeups in general. And anyway, I think that will come in the future, but
That's good.
it's that.
Any other questions for Jenifer? Yeah.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay. I move that the select board appoint Jenifer Durgin to the Hartford Climate Action Steering Team for a 3-year term beginning November 14th, 2023 and ending November 13th, 2026.
I'll second.
We have a second from Ally. Any discussion?
Thank you for your service.
Okay, anyone else? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it.
Bye.
I didn't hear Dan. but
Dan is it, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll now go to the town manager's report. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since my last report, I've continued meeting with community stakeholders and members of a growing support network here in the town of Hartford. I've met with leadership of the Queechee Club in the person of Brian Kelly. I've participated in my first meeting of the Upper Valley Leadership Team. I've attended a meeting of the Hartford Rotary Club recently and had a splendid time getting to know the membership and the culture of that group. I plan to ride the roads of Hartford this week with DPW Director Brian Gazda and to tour town recreational facilities with Parks and Rec Director Scott Hausler. Now, as you know, the town awarded the contract for our upcoming community safety study to Strategy Matters out of Dorchester, Massachusetts, at the quoted price of $30,000. I've held an initial Zoom meeting with them on November 8th to discuss logistics on how to go forward. They've confirmed that they can be flexible regarding the community outreach work that needs to be done in order to avoid the very worst of the winter weather. The next step appears to be setting up a process management team of roughly 5 to 7 people. And they intend to use this letter as a means by which to reach out to the community, asking for people to apply to them to be placed on this 5 to 7 person process management committee. If anyone has suggestions regarding who might be invited to join the process management team, please let me know. I'd be happy to forward those names on to Strategy Matters. As a relative newcomer, I would be happy to receive suggestions so that we can put together a diverse list of people from various walks of life and perspectives. Strategy Matters has drafted a letter, as I've shown you, seeking applicants to serve on the PMT. And we will post this letter on the town's website and distribute it in any other fashion that someone can suggest. As for now, I'll be signing the Strategy Matters contract, which looks fairly vanilla to me, and which authorizes an initial payment to that firm. They do bill at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of their process. I will point out that town staff, in the persons of the Emergency Management Coordinator, Scott Cooney, the Fire Marshal, the Planning Department Director, and myself, we've been made aware of a stream bank erosion issue located along the banks of a stream running just behind the rear of the Hartford Avenue Cumberland Farms store, and also a residential neighborhood on the other side of that stream, South Street, James Street. A state geologist will be in town tomorrow to assess the situation and provide any recommendations he might have as to how we might try to address the sloughing off of some slopeside material that seems to have been happening recently. I also have a.
Can I ask you a question on that one,
Yeah,
John?
please, by all means.
What is the impact to town roads with that situation behind that?
Town roads don't seem to be impacted. This is just erosion off of hillsides into a stream that runs between the Cumberland Farms, which is up on a hill, and the residential neighborhood below.
And the stream runs into Connecticut River?
I presume so. It's probably in the watershed, right?
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'd also like to put in a plug on behalf of Claire Forsyth. She notes that the Hartford Norwich Holiday Basket Helpers, also known as HNHBH, has provided holiday toys and clothing to children in Hartford and Norwich since 1983. We also provide food baskets to seniors. We match children to sponsors who fulfill gift wish lists, 3 pieces of clothing and 2 toys or gift cards to teens, and provide food baskets to seniors. Through donations, we also provide food cards for all the families and seniors in our program. She points out we are in dire need of sponsors for 84 teens who request gift cards totaling $150. Please visit their website at www.holidaybasketsvt.org to sponsor a teen or donate to seniors and food cards. With regard to the SIGACs, as they call them, the significant activities of the various departments, I'll point out that the assessor has noted that he's received 2 proposals for the 2025 reevaluation. He'll be coming soon. He probably will have some words about that tonight, but he'll be coming back soon before the select board to discuss those bids, those proposals, and the recommendation that he might have. As to the Hartford Environmental Sustainability Coordinator's Office, he notes that the Hartford Energy Commission is starting to plan for the Spring Energy Fair. This event will be similar to last year's Energize Upper Valley event that took place on April at the Listen Center. However, in addition to having industry specialists and nonprofit organizations tabling, the Energy Commission is planning to have educational workshops of energy, heat pumps, weatherization, etc. Please reach out to the Energy Commission or the Environmental Sustainability Coordinator, Dana Clausen, if there are specific topics anybody would like a workshop on. The Department of Public Works notes that they're working on recruitment for vacant positions. He also points out that they're mobilizing their vehicles, plows, and equipment for the winter plowing season, which has already struck a first blow, although a mild one. He will continue to work on July 10th storm events with his team, especially at the major project on Jericho Road. They've turned off water for wintertime accounts. And in the Parks and Rec Department, Tim Schall, the owner and operator of Schall Engineering, met with Lowry Property Services to mark out the site for the new World War I, World War II Veterans Memorial at Veterans Park. Soon after, Lowry Property Services, owned and operated by Troy Lowry, was on site and started the digging. Lowry Property Services have partnered with the Veterans Memorial Monument Committee to prepare the site for the footing foundation scheduled to be poured later next week by Clint Potter, owner and operator of Clint's Concrete. All three companies have volunteered their time and professional expertise to support the monument project, and we want to thank them for all they do for the World War I, World War II Veterans Memorial Monument Committee and moving this project forward. The department wants to remind us that they held a very successful trunk or treat event at Lyman Park back on the 28th, and wishes to thank community members and businesses that have donated candy for this year and in other years. They had 1,100 participants coming to the event, so they're very pleased about that. Pivoting in a different seasonal theme, they are now seeking volunteers to be elves at this year's Polar Express. They'll be operating out of the Norwich train station. Come spread a little holiday cheer. The fire department notes that they're advertising 2 firefighter EMT positions and expect to have an additional vacancy in February. And they have a consultant working on the draft of the town emergency operations plan update. They expect to present that to the town staff and the select board relatively soon. The police department reports that the new full-time certified officer, Bryce Moody, began his field training on November 6th. HPD now has 1 drone pilot for its drone program, and a second HPD pilot is working on his certification to give them 2 drone pilots. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for John? Lanny?
Yeah, John, can you probably don't have it, but can you find out what the projected timeline is to get the South Main Street parking lot wrapped up for this year?
Okay.
And also, can you find out if they're going to continue construction on the bridge in Hartford Village through the winter, or if they're going to wrap that up at some point and commence again in the spring?
Okay.
It'd be worthwhile to know as far as for construction and truck traffic goes.
Very good. Cool.
And I don't believe there's anything else. I noticed that they did complete the work out to Queechee. Queechee culvert is completed, which is good to see that. And again, that's it. Oh, the town also worked on Queechee Main Street as well, shoring that up. So it's good to see that as well. So, but give us an update. That'd be good.
I did pass along your praise of the department on those 2 matters, and they appreciate favorable input.
Yeah,
thank you.
Any other questions for John? Okay, thank you, John. All right, we'll go to board reports, motions, and ordinances.
Mr. Chair, so I do have one quick question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
John, I know you have tons of experience in municipal governance, but I am wondering, as you go through your rounds around town, if there's anything the select board can do more directly to be supportive.
I appreciate that, and I may have suggestions down the road. I figure I should keep my mouth shut and my ears open for a while, but maybe there'll come a time that we can kind of assess how it's going.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, all right, board reports, motions, and ordinances. We're gonna start with the assessor budget presentation. Mary, you have a question?
I have a question. I was thinking about this as I've gone over the, the material that we got in our packets. And I find sometimes personally that when I'm looking at the budgetary material, not the stuff that we get here, but in our budget books, that sometimes my eyes kind of pop out when I see the costs of things. But then I was realizing as I went through Lisa's budget that she took into consideration that sometimes, I don't know, hopefully we would be aware of this, but there's a lot that goes on. That sometimes it changes from year to year, going from a part-time person to a full-time person. So all of a sudden, sometimes a salary looks huge and I'm going, whoa, what happened, from 2024 to 2025? And then I realized that there's 2 full-time positions instead of 1.5 or something like that. Is there a way either in our presentations from here on out that we are aware of like changes from year to year in the amount of staffing? Because I think it makes a huge difference in the way that we look at the amount of money that goes into some of these things, both the salaries and the benefits and everything.
I can certainly pass along that request that they do so.
Okay, Mr. Assessor.
Okay, thank you and good evening. And speaking to that, I think that's part of the issue with my budget, and maybe why you brought it up. So we had a full-time assistant assessor and a part-time assessor before me. So that's part of the increase in the salaries here. So fortunately, I have one of the easier, smaller budgets. So it should be a pretty quick presentation.
Just for the general public, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Rick Vincent. I'm the assessor for the town of Hartford. I won't bore you with the line by line presentation. Some of the lines increased in the budget, some decreased, some stayed the same. Some were level funded. I want to point out on line 315, recruitment and training, that would be on page 15. There's an error on my part. So under the proposed 2025 budget, there's $4,600. But if you look over to the left, I have a breakdown of the costs. And I failed to include $2,500 in education courses for Christina, the assistant assessor. So when you look at that breakdown, it's $2,100 for a total. Is everybody with me?
No, what line item?
174.
On page 15, it's 10, 174, 315, recruitment and training.
Okay.
Okay. So the proposed budget for that line item is $4,600 over on the right. If you go back over to the left under the breakdown for the individual costs, it says total is $2,100.
Yep.
That's because I left out $2,500 in education course costs for Christina.
Okay, so 46 is the total, 4,600.
Correct. Yep.
And that's, so the number that's in the book as far as for the town manager of 4,600 is.
That's correct.
The description itself did not include the 2,500.
Okay, all right. That makes sense. Thank you.
So the total budget for the assessing department, total proposed budget is $294,821. That's on page 16, about 3/4 of the way down. Valuation total. That's an increase of $20,592 or 7.5%
Books
from
don't
the
line up with ours.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but would you like me to share the presentation or are you comfortable with this?
His page numbers aren't lining up with ours.
Oh, well, I'm
They
sorry.
were in the original book, maybe, I don't know if the new one, if they're.
No, they're not, not in the new one. That's the problem. That's why it's
Oh,
taking me
okay, yeah,
longer
so
to
you're
get there.
probably looking at the old- In the old book, page 15 is that.
They have two books, one that's been
It's
reformatted.
page 10
Okay.
and the new
Page 10.
page 10. Yeah, and that new stuff that we got from Gail last week.
Yeah, I got that
Or
for
2
this,
weeks ago.
okay.
Um,
The line items help more than page numbers.
And he's talking about the totals at the bottom of that,
Right.
yeah, which are not bolded in the updated one apparently, but which are in the original.
Would anyone like the presentation on the screen and or is that preferable for the public? Anyone have an opinion?
Yeah. if we could
I
put
think
it
it will
up
be
as
helpful.
well.
Yeah, that's not too much.
Sorry for keeping interrupting.
All right.
So, where would you like me to?
What page is the total? Is it 174?
Oh, on the new book?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm looking at the old book.
Where we just were at 10, 174, 315, it's,
No, what's
it's
the
page
total?
10. Oh, the
No,
total.
Total.
Total is 294, 821.
Yeah, I know, but what, I'm trying to find out what page it is in the new book.
Oh.
This makes it confusing because half of us are working from the old, half of us are working from the new.
I actually don't see the total in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where, are you on the old book or the new book?
I'm in the new one, but it's not, I don't see the total here.
Yeah, I see on the next page, I see it in the old book.
So if you go to like 10, 174, 418, it's gonna be right below that.
That's the old book that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have the old book.
But it's just below that.
10, 174, 418.
That's below, it should have the.
I don't see it. Gail, can you help me out here? Because I'm not,
Question?
I'm not seeing this in the new book, the total.
The formatting of the new that you have did not have the totals for the departments, that's why you're not seeing it.
Right.
Ah,
It's what we have
that
on the.
explains everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're looking for something that's not there.
Yes, that-
But you'll find it eventually.
That's, I keep, I'm gonna keep looking at it still.
Why not? Because when I did the other formatting, it changed the formatting for the totals.
Yeah.
Ah,
One of the 22s, so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a matter of every time you change the formatting, it also changes internal formatting. So I certainly can redo it again and add totals and send it out if that's going to be beneficial, because I know there's been a lot of questions about it, but my understanding was the main concern was to get the actual 2022 in there, so being time sensitive.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand how the vertical column affects the total.
I'm not a software guru.
Okay.
So I can explain that to you. My priority was to make sure that you guys have that column.
And on the presentation, if you go to page 10.
I did go back and do it again, but
Do you-
I need to know if it's majority of the board that would like.
I just need to have the number. That's, I just, I don't care about having the whole book again. I just need the number, the total.
Well, you're not gonna get the total without having the whole book redone. So.
Yeah, if I could
Can we
maybe,
just add this?
yeah, maybe just suggest, I would personally would not want you to
No.
go through it again. This was a lot of work and this is really helpful as is. If there is a way to just have, even via email, a list of what the department totals are. If the rest of the board finds that helpful, maybe that's a way forward.
I would say that once the final budget that's going to the voters is available on the website, it would be helpful to have the totals by department. Anyone disagree with that?
Not in the least, but I do also agree with Ally that
Yeah,
at least
for
we
now,
could
I
get.
don't need another book.
So I could, no, if I could get a printout of them, I could just write it in the book. I'd be happy with that, but it's,
If I have to go in and print the totals, I might as well just print the book again for you, because I have to pull it all up anyways to do that. So It's not, I'm not saying that I can't do it, I just need to know if you want it, but if you want the totals, I can't get the totals without redoing it, so.
Sure.
The totals are also in these presentations, right?
Well, I think we're just tiptoeing around the fact that it pains us to give you extra work. But I do think that it seems pretty clear that it would be, I personally would love to see the totals. I do understand.
I think the one that is the final budget that goes to the voters that is on the website, because that is the one that I will go back and refer to next year when we're looking at the budget. So whatever I can work with everything we have now.
But if it has to be done at some point anyway.
Yeah.
Right, then.
But I would say wait, because we might make some changes. We are likely to make changes from what we have printed right now. And we will want to see that before it goes to the voters.
My understanding would be at the point that we're making changes, though, those are individual cells being changed versus the whole formula is being redone anyway, right? Like the formatting would have to be done regardless, and then any changes that we make would just be individual cells that would be like, specific numbers being changed. Is that correct? So if the reformatting has to be done regardless, we might as well go through that sooner rather than later.
I think we should hear from the assessor. We can figure this out. If we want a total of each, I mean, you can find them in the presentations, I think, and you can jot down what they are, you know. I think we're getting off course.
For sure. I'm sorry, Rick, where would you like the?
Can you send me an Excel spreadsheet? That would be helpful.
Well, I'm nearly done anyway, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Just send me an Excel spreadsheet, please.
Okay, well, we'll see about that.
Might as well scroll down, so we have the total at the end of that.
Yeah. I think so. So I think that is the budget, right? That's your overall. So it looks like an $18,000
I do too.
increase. Yeah.
Looks like about $2,500 different than
Yeah.
what I have in my.
Which would be the same then. What's the difference in
Well,
that?
yeah, I think it's probably at $2,500 in the course costs.
Yeah.
So it should be the 294.
Should be 294,821.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the total budget for the year proposed. John did mention a touch on the revaluation for 2025. John mentioned that we received 2 proposals. There was a third proposal that we received, but it was beyond the deadline, so we can't consider that. I'm working on the 2 proposals now. I have spoken to both vendors. I had a number of questions for each vendor. I'll be hearing back from one of the vendors early next week. And I'll be able to wrap everything up and decide which proposal I think is the better of the 2. So I'll be back to you sometime in the next couple of weeks with those proposals. We do currently have $351,601.59. I'll repeat that, $351,601.59 in the revaluation reserve fund for the 2025 revaluation. I think that is all I have. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions for Rick? Good.
Is that $351,000 figure in the reserve funds within the town, or is that part of the state appropriation that?
That's the state appropriation that's now in, correct me, Gail, if I'm wrong, that's now in the town funds, correct?
Correct, it's in a reserve account that's owned by the town.
Okay, but it comes from the state.
Correct, every year we get usually between 45 and 49,000.
And with the understanding that you're going to present us with the bid for the revaluation, are we within the means that we have reserved?
It looks like we will be, but I'm gonna hold reservation or reserve final comment on that until I bring the presentation to the board.
Sounds good, thank you.
Any other questions for Rick? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the town clerk budget presentation. So welcome, Lisa.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Well, I guess you all can see that, okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Lisa O'Neill, the town clerk, for those folks who don't know me. Thanks for having me here. The town clerk's office has two budgets within it, an elections budget and then a vital statistics budget, which covers the operation of the office in general. This is a day in the life of the clerk's office, just a little graphic I do each year to give everyone kind of an overview of the kinds of things your clerk's office does. If you are not familiar with us, come on by and see us. We're happy to show you around. And the first section of our budget is the election administration. This is basically a summary of the kinds of things that are covered within each one of those GL line items, in case you need to refer back to it when I get to the actual numbers, but this will give you a good snapshot of what things are covered there. So within the election administration, the salaries include the Board of Civil Authority and election workers primarily. And that also includes, in this case, it would be 3 elections during this budget season for FY25. It also will include any abatement hearings we have and any tax appeal hearings we have. It includes pre-election activities too, and with the increased number of absentee ballot processing we do, there's a lot more pre-election activity than there was when I started here in 2018. So we do compensate our BCA for that as well. Most of the other numbers are roughly the same as the previous year. Contracted services went up a little bit. I'm anticipating that being largely due to inflation and increased costs for ballot preparation and programming for the tabulators. Materials and supplies, that includes ballot printing. And with, we have a presidential primary, and although those will be covered by the state, our town meeting, those numbers have started to go up. Typically, we have 3 pages of ballots, including a school district ballot, which is typically one side. The select board town ballot tends to be 3 sides, so 1 2-sided and 1 single-sided. Last year was the first time I've only seen it on 1 piece of paper, but 2 sides. But typically it's a couple extra pages. Department equipment, I've added $1,500 here to add a laptop to be used within the elections. I'm the only one that goes with a laptop, and it would be a great relief to me and some of our election workers to have an additional laptop there. So that's the reason I've added that in there. So you can see a bit of an increase there overall from last year, the current year we're in at $3,739. And then a few highlights. As I said, we were asking for a laptop. I gave you a rundown of how people voted in 2023 in terms of the method they chose. We still in Hartford, most people prefer to vote in person, although not by huge numbers. It's about 40% who vote absentee. People love the secure ballot drop box that was added a couple of years ago. You see it when you come into our building from the back parking lot. I got a compliment on it yesterday when I was at the post office. And then I gave you a rundown of the BCA's major activity in June, which was a biennial checklist review. So every 2 years or every odd year, the BCA reviews name by name the entire checklist. And we read them, we literally read them in a meeting. We collectively decide who we should challenge if we're not sure they live here anymore for some, or, you know, some other public information we may know. We can do an active purge every 2 years based on certain criteria outlined in statute. And so we purged 88 voters at that time. We sent additional challenge letters to 92 voters. And then we monitor basically daily the different other ways we can keep our checklist up to date. And I outlined what those were. And our total number as of November 1st, we have 9,330 registered voters. Of those, 1,619 are challenged, which means we're waiting for them to let us know whether they are still eligible to vote. They could come to the polling place, they could request a ballot, but they would need to sign an affidavit saying they do in fact still live here. So they still are on our rolls, but they have to sign something saying they would like to continue to vote. And that's the elections portion. I don't know if you want to ask questions at this point or wait until I'm done with the other
Does anyone have any questions on the election? Elaine?
Yeah, I see under contracted services, the increase, but you have, you used encumbered funds in FY23. Do you not have any encumbered funds or any
The only
thoughts of
income-
having encumbered funds?
The only encumbered funds we retained for FY24 was in the amount of $5,000, and it was set aside primarily to help us bring on board the new part-time assistant clerk.
So there would be nothing left of that then?
I don't imagine there would be very much left by the time we get a desk. We have an electrician coming to put outlets in the floor to situate her desk. So I anticipate we will use all of that in that time.
Great. Thank you.
Mary?
I just have a quick question. The laptop that you're proposing, would that only be used at election time or would you be using it at other times?
It's possible it would be used at other times. It would depend, but it's primarily for the elections. Now that I have a part-time assistant clerk who will likely be attending the elections, but it may also be useful for some of the election workers at the end of the night. So we'll see what methodologies, but it would be available for the office staff, you know, as well.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Vital statistics.
Okay, so same thing here, highlight of what each line item for the GLs covers. It's also listed in your budget books as well under the narrative. This first slide is about the revenues that the town clerk's office generates. It doesn't fluctuate all that much from year to year in terms of our comfort level of predicting what that might look like. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but that is an offset to our budget.
Are there any fees you can collect on like cannabis licenses or is that not?
We get from the state, it's at their discretion. So
okay.
There are no local fees for cannabis licensing, but I believe we got, and I would have to check this out, I believe we got about $300 from cannabis licensing. And it's up to the state to determine whether they feel like they got their piece, and then so periodically we'll get a random check for $100. It goes to the finance office and they come and ask, what do you think this is for?
Right.
So I think we got 2 or 3 of those last year. I can't speak to that specifically, but I'm happy to get back to you if you'd like to know. And here is a rundown of the basic GLs and the comparison for the year we're in currently, what was approved and what is proposed. The salaries and benefits, that does in fact incorporate the half-time assistant town clerk that we've added, and then the proposed budgetary increases that we were provided by the HR director. Many of these things stayed roughly the same. Any modest increases you see in travel and meetings, advertising, membership dues and that sort of thing, due primarily to inflation. And for travel and meetings, again, I expect the assistant town clerk who's part-time will be attending some trainings that the other assistant town clerk has not in the past. She has the experience beyond both me and our new assistant part-time town clerk, who I should say is Melinda Brooks, for those of you maybe who haven't popped in to see us. We're thrilled to have her there. She's a great addition to our office, and we appreciate having her there.
And in her free time, she's helping train up to provide some coverage in the town manager's office when both Lana and Paula will be simultaneously absent. So she's a great asset.
Yes, she is that. So we're happy to have her. We have her tucked away in a corner at the moment and working on getting her a desk right front and center so that she'll feel a little more welcome. The recruitment and training, last year I had it in there so we could recruit for this position that Melinda currently fills. I'm not anticipating the need for that this year, fingers crossed, everything is going well. State payment of licenses, so we, for marriage licenses and dog licenses, we collect fees for that, most of which goes to the state, I might add. So the increase is reflected because marriage license fees went up by state statute. It's supposed to sunset in FY25. I've never seen a fee sunset in my history, so I don't know for sure, but we will be sending them more money because they will now, instead of $10 per license, they'll get not 10, 50. Instead of 50, they'll get 65. It does increase what we retain from 10 to 15. So not a huge difference for us, but that's where that jump is coming from.
Is that reflected in the revenue part?
Well, the revenue part is the part that we keep.
Right, no, I know, but we would still take in more even if we're.
You're taking in $5 more per marriage license.
Right, and then sending $5 more per, I guess I'm just.
$15 more you're sending to the state.
So you're netting less per transaction?
So it used to be $60 for the fee. We kept 10, the state got 50. Now the fee is 80, we keep 15, the state gets 65.
And that is all reflected in the revenue too.
Correct. So there's the offset there, but this is the amount that would get sent roughly to the state. Contracted services, I worked with our IT department to come up with most of these. So those are some of the changes that we see there. Postage, because we will have 3 elections this cycle. I don't have a postage line item in the elections portion. And even though in November of 2024, the state will be mailing those ballots, the cutoff for that mailing list is late August to early September. So we ended up mailing, I want to say around 400 ballots ourselves in 2022 and 2020. And then the same will be true for the primary in August, and then in March of 2025, which will fall in this cycle. We mail anywhere from 800 to 1,000, ballots locally. So, and then the postage rates continue to climb every 6 months, it seems lately. So I've tried to account for that. The other numbers are roughly the same. Telephone numbers gone up some. That includes an increase in our number of licenses in our office, equipment, and actual phone, and things like that. And the IT department helped me with those numbers as well. Mm-hmm. And other than we're not adding a new department equipment, that $2,800 last year was put towards, part of the equipment for the new assistant town clerk. And then there's the difference from what was approved from FY24 to what we're proposing here. And less the revenue, and then there's your total on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
You answered my question about postage, that if there is a charter on the ballot, either in 24 or 25, it does not need to be included in the mailed ballot.
According to the Secretary of State's answer to my question about that very thing, I had assumed that it would need to go into any absentee ballots. I think largely because the number of people voting that way has changed so dramatically. But JP Isabel from the Secretary of State's office responded, showed me the statutory reference, and there's nothing in statute that requires it. It does require it to be put in every voting booth, and that I knew. So there's nothing in statute. I would recommend that the board, regardless of when or if you do the charter changes, that you seek town council about that, in addition to the changes, proposed changes to the charter, just in case they have a different opinion. It would be very costly and it would be an arduous task. But if it was required, we'd have to figure that out, but I have not accounted for that in this budget.
Or even just like a postcard that very clearly says, here's where you can find the
Right.
budget. Or
And I know I looked back to 2017, which was the last time a charter change was done, and I wasn't here at that time, but I believe the entire proposal was on the website. I think you can find it there. The warnings were there. The one thing I'll point out is both the town and school ballots had the question on there, and I know that the school had some comments about some of the proposed charter. So I'm sure you all are working together regarding that as you go through that. So there are things that need to be considered, and then there's a number of hearings and things that, just things that you'd want to be aware of. And we certainly would have copies in the clerk's office and
Probably libraries too, maybe.
yeah, I think generally, we post things in certain places as part of the warning,
Right.
but the whole thing doesn't get posted. The question is actually fairly short. So how many people will tap into reading the entire volume of the proposed charter is hard to know, but we would certainly make it available and let folks know. It would largely probably come out of the town manager's office for that part of it, where our office posts the warnings. But most of that kind of thing comes out of the town manager's office, but we'd work together to get it out there. The other highlights are just, I mentioned the hiring of the part-time assistant town clerk. The Board of Abatement, which is made up of all 7 of you, the Board of Civil Authority, myself, the assessor, and the treasurer, they held 17 abatement requests over 4 abatement meetings. 14 of those resulted in an abatement of some kind, and 3 were denied. We held 2 tax appeal hearings this year. Last year, we didn't have any requests for appeal. This year, we had 2 split into 2 different meetings. And just so you know, I was appointed to the Secretary of State's Clerk Advisory Council at the beginning of the year, and that's been a really rewarding experience to work with other clerks. And in concert with the Secretary of State's office, we have a new Secretary of State as of start of January. So it's exciting to see the different things they're trying to do for public information, and I appreciate that they're looking for clerk input regarding that. And that's pretty much it.
Questions?
Operations over there.
I'm a municipal employee. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Next item is the police budget discussion.
Yeah, it was. Yep. It was.
Lisa, are you still sharing your screen?
Oh, sure. It's not my, share it all the way home.
Hope that new laptop comes with training, Lisa. Whoa.
It's really hard for me to find.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, I can't help you, I'm sorry. You need to bring both with me next time, yeah. Slightly less.
Page 13 of the new one.
I'm assuming it's like.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
Are you all ready? Those first two are pretty easy.
Yes.
Before I start, I want to introduce you. You know some of the people in the back of the room. You know Lieutenant Howell, you know Deputy Chief Connie Kelly. Not sure you know Scott Smith, our Director of Communications. And next to him is our newest lieutenant as of December 1st of our Outreach Division, Carl Ebenhausen.
Great.
They're here to support me and answer questions for you that I don't have the answers for.
Sounds great.
So the mission and values, I think we've all seen that. I wanted to just jump right through the meat of our discussion tonight.
I actually have a question about the
Sure.
mission values.
Okay,
Is
go
that
ahead,
something that's been,
Yeah, go ahead.
been established? Is that a new mission values?
No, it's the same one they've had for a while. Yes. Yep. The new organizational chart with the new structure of the department with three patrol or police divisions and a communication division to give you an idea of what we're looking at moving forward. I took your budget guidance and I kind of used their words against you a little bit here. Well, you know, hey, come in and ready to go. So maintain a long-term focus, 5, 10, 15 years. The strategic plan, I believe, was provided to you that we developed earlier this year. Identify resources for increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, which is our outreach division, as we move forward with that. And as I just learned today, or actually yesterday, from Deputy Chief Connie Kelly, she's joining the town manager on the DEI committee, the DEI project. So that's very helpful and in line with what we're doing. Plan with the statistics, execute with data. Again, I'm asking for a data crime analyst. That goes right along with your guidance. Continue to leverage technology infrastructure to increase productivity, efficiency, and preserve institutional knowledge. Again, we're asking for some upgrades to our technology and some additions to our budget for employee appreciation, which helps with the retention process. Investigate options relative to increased demands on all departments. Our increased demands for non-police related responses and solutions to some of the society's biggest challenges, which will be handled by our outreach division. And as you will see, or you already have seen in the next line, the 4 community resource liaisons, or whatever name we end up landing on in the future. And fund increased non-sworn community safety response staff. Again, that's those 4 individuals. Fund select board and town staff leadership, education, and development. Our training budget for staff leadership training, community policing training is up from last year. And pursue grants to offset costs for items included in the budget. If I could. One of the things we're working on or have been working on is we have a large amount of grants we're working on from the Underground Railroad. So what is it called, Tom? Underground Railroad Operation Project, excuse me. It is a human trafficking, child exploitation organization that offers grants. We're working on a grant for that to help with the Celebrate expense that we have in our budget. The JAG grants, or the Justice Administration grants, our COP grants. There's a list of about 10 grants where we are working on or trying to apply for.
I mean, I can ask questions later, but I think we have difficulty with JAG burn grants because of the Welcoming Hartford ordinance.
Yeah, we've already addressed that through the town attorney, and we're so far so good.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was addressed earlier this year. So not a problem there, but we are looking at a lot of grants to offset some of the costs. The unfortunate part is we won't know those answers until after the budget's been approved. So. Our calls for service continuing to rise. Right now, we're looking at, by the end of this year, approximately 9,382 calls for service, up from last year, which was 7,910. So the calls keep going up. So hence the need for efficiencies in our technology and the additional staffing to help with non-criminal calls for service. So what our budget currently looks like, last year, 3,490,228. Proposed budget for this year is up $940,844. Some of that is contractual obligations, and some of that is some of the items we were requesting. That gives us currently 16 patrol officers and supervisors, 3 detectives, 3 divisional command staff members, and a chief of police. Moving forward, we will have the parking enforcement in our department budget, revenue and expense for the downtown parking enforcement when the meters get installed. We're going to utilize that person also as an animal control officer if all goes well. I don't think it's a 40-hour job to write tickets downtown, but we can utilize that person for other tasks to reduce the burden on the officers, because when we transport an animal, it's over to New Hampshire. So it takes us out of town, out of state. So if we can reduce that on our officers and keep them in town, that's what we try to do. It gives us a administrative assistant and a records manager, which we are currently advertising for. And what this budget does not include is the 5 civilian employees, additional employees, which is the data crime analyst and the 4 community liaisons. With that, we are looking at a grant that will provide, if given by the Vermont Department of Health, that will give us, if awarded, $150,000 a year towards that program, which would fund 2 of those positions. I won't know the answer to that until again after the budget season, probably.
For how many years?
What's that?
For how many years?
2 years guaranteed, and the person I'm working with on the grant said probably 3. It's a bill that Dick Sears from Bennington, representative, sponsored, and it's $5 million out there for municipals and nonprofits to work on community violence reduction, from youth all the way up through to marginalized communities, to elderly, to intimate partner. So it's just a reduction in violence.
And just a clarification, so you say these 5 civilian employees, that's where that $150,000 would go to support?
That would go to support the 4 community liaisons.
2 of the 4.
It would cover 2 of the 4, yes.
And let's say we are unsuccessful in getting that grant, what would be the total cost of these 5 civilian employees?
I believe it might be on the next slide. Yeah, it's coming up, Rocket.
Oh, okay.
Let's go by one. Yes. So. There was one corrected, yes, for salaries, and I don't know if you all got the email on that. What Deputy Chief Connie Kelly and I done is sat down and went over the numbers, and we are budgeted for 23 sworn positions. We had originally calculated 25 in our spreadsheet, and I mistakenly did not take those numbers out of the total. So I've reduced that down. I believe it was 200 and some odd thousand reduction in the total wages for 24 to 25. The difference.
The slide is correct, but the book is incorrect. Is that?
This slide is not correct.
Wow.
What GL code are we looking at?
It would reduce the difference from 493 down to 264, 804.70.
What line item?
Where are you?
I'm looking at the slide presentation.
You have a line item?
I don't off the top of my head.
It's not been updated, this is just brought.
Right.
Yep.
Just barely discovered in the last 2 days, so.
But it's probably a combination of GLs. Yeah.
Yeah, but I see.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not gonna be a
GL
single
codes.
one.
Yeah, it's GL codes for
Yeah,
lieutenant,
that's-
it's GL codes for corporals, it's GL codes for officers, yeah.
Okay, so I'm rethinking the fact that we do need new books. Sorry.
I can give you the breakdown this week and I can send it out.
Just clarification here, so that adjustment which we got in our emails is a downward adjustment of 189,000.
No, actually it was a 220, it was updated again.
Oh,
It was updated to 228,490.
I see it, okay.
So the slide that reads 451,118. Where's, can you show me your handwritten note? Like which slide are you having there?
It's the slide that's up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the slide that's up on the board right now. If you look at the difference block, that difference block instead of 493 would be 264,804.
for, so the difference is
Yes.
that, okay.
And that's really contractual obligations.
Yeah, but that's spread across multiple positions.
Multiple GL codes, yeah, multiple
Yeah, so
positions.
that's doesn't help much.
Again, and this covers those 23 budgeted. We have 19 officers currently on staff. We have 4 vacancies, 3 patrol, 1 patrol officers, 1 corporal vacancy. And our records clerk is still vacant, but really that comes down to the budgeted numbers for sworn officers.
Right. And Chief, just taking your sense of the hiring environment, obviously, I think it's good for us to budget for those things, but then I think if it's entirely unrealistic that we would fill those positions, maybe that's worth considering as well.
Yeah, we have, Connie, can you tell me how many in background right now?
We have applications.
Nobody's in background. Nobody's in background yet. I feel confident that we can fill those. I mean, I've heard that many times from chiefs in the past, and it doesn't happen, but I'd hate to not have it and then have someone come through the door and that we can hire.
How many vacancies do you have now?
4 officer vacancies and 1 records clerk.
Mary?
Chief, do you foresee any problems with I mean, I know I read the article in the newspaper, but do you foresee any problems because of the $30,000 bonus that Lebanon was asking for?
No, nothing yet.
I've actually talked to the Lebanon town manager, and he says that that has not moved the needle significantly for them.
Good. Again, on this one, and the number of the difference block, because of the 2 positions, the healthcare insurance and all the other insurances were figured up for a single person plan, which was $12,274. So we took out 2 of those positions. So we eliminated 2 of those insurance blocks, which was a total of $24,548. So that drops the difference box down to $33,313. The proposed budget is down to $426,223 for the healthcare.
All right, so
Insurances.
what's the difference?
The
How much
difference,
less is the difference?
the difference would be 24,548 less.
Thank you.
Yep. And again, and that isn't healthcare cost, that was based on a single person plan.
Okay.
And you can see there's some of the increases that we have and why. Again, here's the data crime analyst and community resource specialist times 4. Estimated budget increase of $375,000. That's based on a $24 an hour rate and single coverage for healthcare. The family coverage is 32,000 something. Single is 12,274. So it really will depend on who we hire and what they need for insurances that will fluctuate this number.
Mary?
Where do you find these people? Are they, is it is there education in this? Are they people who are already members of the police force?
These wouldn't be sworn officers, they'd be civilian employees.
Okay,
And we've had actually quite a bit of interest
okay.
since we've talked about it. Now, whether they actually apply, it's a little different for us for the hiring process because it's not a police officer's position. It's not as difficult to hire for. Will we have a luck in finding 4? As I've seen from other department heads, they're struggling to find people. So that is part of the concern.
Is the number of having 4 of them, I mean, is that your assessment of what we need to make them effective?
Yeah.
Is there okay.
That would put one on each patrol shift.
Okay.
So there would be 24/7 coverage for a civilian response to go out and handle the non-emergency calls, or as many as they can. They can't do them all. But to help patrol shifts and keep them active in law enforcement instead of non-criminal.
Just breaking this down further, so just roughly dividing this by 5 positions, it's about 75,000 a piece. Is
Okay.
that including healthcare, dental insurance, et cetera?
Yeah, the single person rate. Again, if it goes to, I think a 2-person plan is 27,000 plus and a family plan is 32,000. So depending on, the applicant and their needs, that number could go up.
Al?
Yeah, Chief, I'm just curious if, knowing very little about a community resource specialist, but what I've heard from you and what you shared in the packet, it definitely seems like that role could be useful. And I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit to the difference between, you know, say investing in community resource specialists versus other social workers in the department. And I understand that their functions, or I think I understand their functions to be a little different. So if you could just speak to that.
First and foremost, social workers are more money. I don't know if we'd get a social worker for $24 an hour. The community response person is more of a liaison, a resource liaison. They're more designed to direct people towards the social worker programs in our community that are already offered. Not necessarily designed to write a warrant for a mental health warrant, like a crisis worker that we have now. More so to direct people and lead them to the resources they need to get the help they need. Instead of relying on the police department to provide those services for them, because we're not the experts in most of those areas like mental health, drug addiction, homelessness, and things. So they would be more of a resource to direct people to the correct resources in our community, help them achieve better outcomes in the long run. Officers don't have time, especially with staffing shortages, to spend hours working with somebody to get them to an appointment, to help arrange a doctor's appointment. Some of the successes in Rutland is, you know, making that introduction to a free clinic for somebody who didn't want to go, helping them bathe, helping them, you know, find facilities to take a shower so they feel human, so they can go to a doctor's appointment without being embarrassed. Things that officers just aren't going to be able to do and shouldn't be doing, frankly. Spending an awful lot of time on a scene that's not criminal when we have bigger problems to deal with is not the best use of our people. So this is designed to take upwards of 50% of our calls for service and direct them to a non-law enforcement person. It also helps with the outcomes because our uniforms by themselves alone can generate anxiety and frustrations or anger. So, and increase the likelihood of violence on a scene. So sometimes these people, or not sometimes, it's a better outcome for the people we serve. We don't have time to spend on scenes, spending hours directing people, or bringing people to appointments or helping them with appointments or resources. We try, but when there's more pressing needs like a drug house in the town or criminal activity happening somewhere that we can't get to because of something we're tied up on. So it's really to relieve some of that stress on our officers with the staffing shortages and help us redirect our resources to help the town out there.
Ellie, and then Lanny.
Yeah, just one more question about that. Thank you, Chief. And then, so currently these 5 positions, that would be the amount if we opted to add that in, and it's not, those are not currently in what's proposed. Would you anticipate if we did bring in some number of these positions or all of them, that there would be a significant increase in recruitment and training, the amount allocated for that as well?
Yes, there would be. Some of the training would be on the job training with officers. And I apologize, my computer just died, so this is going to go out. There is some on the job training if someone that we hire doesn't have experience. My experience from Rutland, not sure that's going to work, is that these people, a lot of people that we get to apply are in the industry of some sort. No. Are in the industry or connected to the law enforcement industry or social worker industry. So it's not going to be as abrupt of a learning curve. Now you will have, my preference would be to send them to de-escalation training, landlord-tenant laws and landlord-tenant issues, send them to certain trainings to deal with people who are experiencing emotional or mental health, like a CIT training. My goal would be to send them out there to give them that training so they have the tools in their toolbox to handle these individuals the best way possible. But there would be some training costs, possibly, yes.
Chief, I'm not disputing the advantageous work that these people have done in Rutland. My question is that, you know, we've been approached by the fire department about a community nurse, and we're in the baby steps of doing a community safety review.
Right.
So we really don't know what we need right now. This is one of the things that I'm personally hoping that this community safety review will flush out for us. as far as what the needs are. Are we not putting the cart before the horse on this? I mean, should we get the results back from this community safety review to find out what the needs are of the community before we allocate people to go out there? Because that's one thing that we're hoping to get out of this, is what do we need? And I can't see us throwing people out there without knowing what the needs of the community are. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm not saying that I don't think these are people that would be helpful. I just don't think the timing is right now because you don't know what we need.
No, that's a great question. And I appreciate you asking it. Where I don't want to go off the rails here is these people aren't designed or aren't being hired to address all the gaps located or discovered in the community assessment. They can help with that. But they are there to help relieve some of the stress on the department and to provide better outcomes for the people we already serve. If the assessment identifies gaps, we can certainly jump in and help. In the community outreach program, or community outreach division, commander will be assisting with wherever we can in those, filling those gaps. However, these people I'm not wanting these people to do specifically the assessment or filling in the gaps that the assessment finds. These people are here to help our agency and our officers develop or be able to do their job as law enforcement officers, but yet still provide a service to the community members that are most vulnerable within our community. The assessment will identify gaps, absolutely, and these people will help with that. But that's a much bigger project. And if a gap's identified, it's not necessarily always on the town to correct it, but it's up to the town and to identify who should be correcting it. There are a lot of services in our town, but who's doing the work and who's doing what work and where. That's really what I'm looking for from this assessment. So these people aren't going to be involved with that.
So do I understand you correctly that this assessment, even though you want these civilian employees, and if you get them, this assessment may dictate that we're going to need more people, that we may need to hire more people?
I don't know if I can't answer that, but my assumption is, or at least my belief is, if the town's safety assessment identifies some gaps, then we need to look at a coalition as we're trying to put together a coalition, we should be looking at the partners we already have in our community to help fill those gaps. It shouldn't be all in the town to do so. We have mental health workers in this town in organizations. If a gap is discovered in the mental health area, then they should be worked with and relationships formed and partnerships developed to an MOU signed to work on those gaps. It shouldn't be the town saying we need mental health professionals on staff.
Who is the liaison between the two, though?
Our new outreach division commander. So that's where that comes into play. That the town of Hartford shouldn't be, if a gap is discovered in mental health or drug treatment, they shouldn't be hiring a mental health person or a drug treatment professional. They should be reaching out to the partners in our community already, establishing relationships and forming MOUs to say, we need your help with this. And then our outreach division goes out, or our individuals, these 4 civilians go out and they help address these concerns within our community. To look at a police officer on the road who's handling calls for service and say, what's your solution to homelessness? That shouldn't be his solution or her solution. It should be, what is the town and our coalition solution to homelessness? We have people in this town who do homeless prevention. Let's make sure they understand their role and we support them in their role, not necessarily hire a homeless prevention person for the town of Hartford. So the gaps that are discovered, we will work as a coalition. Our outreach division will be part of that to develop coalitions to solve this and partnerships to solve some of the gap problems. But these people aren't necessarily designed for that purpose or hired for that purpose.
Okay, still a lot of unanswered questions about there.
Yeah, I get it. Yep.
Thank you, Chief.
I mean, I might, Mr. Chair, might say, first off, I know you come from Rutland, and I would say that if anyone, I had the honor of seeing Project Vision many years ago, 7 years ago, and it's been a pretty remarkable change in what's happened in that community. And I do think that, I want to be cautious to say, obviously, we're a different community with different needs, and I also sometimes I wonder with budgets, it's like, do we just take it for granted that it grows a certain percentage every year? Because that is de facto, it is a burden on taxpayers that is growing every year.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I do think that I want to be cautious and reiterate that while I'm extremely supportive and thankful for your department's work, I do think in a peaceful society, ideally you have as close to no law enforcement as possible because people are already abiding. And it does seem that the more proactive we can be, the cheaper the more cost effective, and frankly, the more peaceful that will be for our town in the long term. So I'm generally supportive of this idea. And yeah, so I guess it will be curious to see what the community safety review comes up with in terms of what resources are in our community and how we can better utilize that. And I think that taking this approach with Carl, leading a new reform division, is a really interesting model. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. And honestly, if there's I understand that we need to fill shifts, and so that we're not stretching our officers and going in overtime. But if we can get to the point where we don't need to expand our staff further because we have a preemptive civilian front. I mean, Lanny, I would say that when you look at the police log calls, there are a lot of calls that don't necessitate an officer, in my own opinion.
Right.
I mean, unprofessional opinion, but so I do think that there's a pretty clear need, the same as when we look at the fire department, we see how many EMS or pickup slip and fall calls that we get where we don't need to send a fire truck or an ambulance. So I do think that there is already a clear demonstrable need for, at least for, I don't know about but at least for some version of this. So I would say I'm broadly supportive of it.
Good.
Couple things, and with I guess I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit, which you did in the email about this Celebrate program, and in particular with when you say we are seeing a huge increase in sexual crimes, human trafficking cases, drug trafficking cases, and the like. Are those the kind of things that they don't show up on the call log because they're ongoing investigation? Like, can you give us some general statistics on what we are currently experiencing even in the region, if not necessarily just the town of Hartford?
Well,
Hartford Police is involved.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can give you exact statistical data. I can tell you that there are active cases currently that would probably disgust you, and I can't mention here, with child sexual exploitations. So what I can also say is there is, with education and law enforcement, there is a realization that what we used to consider prostitution is often human trafficking through the drug trade. So that is what we're looking at. And it is a huge trend across this, not just the state, but the country and the world. These people are enslaved in this trade, and they can't get out. I've worked these cases myself, and they're horrifying to learn what these women go through, to be honest. So this is a big, and it's not necessarily, do we see an increase? It's, do we have the capability to handle these cases and recognize them and do the work? Investigators that we have now, one of them is doing an outstanding job with this. Again, do we have the resources? And he took it upon himself to do some of this. So it's not really, is it increasing because it's increasing, but it's more, we're recognizing what it is and actually doing the work. And it's not easy work, it's difficult. There is a lot more out there than what we could even identify. It's just figuring out, catching them when we can, basically. So there is, when I say huge increase, it's not just Vermont, it's a national and international problem. So again, it's not necessarily recognizing an increase in our numbers, it's actually having the ability to do the work that increases those numbers.
And you specified, you clarified, you would still need a warrant from a judge to be able to unlock someone's phone without consent.
With no consent, we would need a warrant, search warrant, yes.
And what other kinds of things would that be used for? Like, are there any other examples of the kind of thing that?
For a download of a cell phone, other than drug trafficking, sex, I mean, any kind of criminal case that we might work that's of a substantial seriousness, felonies, we could use this for. All of our information now is on our phones, let's face it. So our search history is everything. So it could be anything from a homicide where they Googled how to murder somebody. It could be on someone's, and you see that in the news and you're like, wow, they put that on their history. So any case we feel the need to, that there's important information on that phone to help with our case, we could download that,
And I think, did you answer the question about going forward? What, so it's still, it's about $33,000 per year?
Well, we dropped it down, our numbers to about, I don't have them right in front of me, but I believe it was mid-20s for a, because you would ask that question, I responded in an email.
Okay.
It was 140 downloads for 33,200. We dropped it to 70 downloads.
Okay.
And the Underground Railroad program is actually, if we get the grant, it would be about 10,000
Okay.
to offset that. Federal partners might be able to help offset that, but again, right now it's an unknown.
Okay. And the Axion, is that what it's called?
Axon.
Axon, that one also. That's right, trying to find the.
Yeah, the Axon was the in-car cameras and the body cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is so. I can't express how important those things are. To now, prosecuting cases, I've had cases where the prosecutors said, you don't have the video, I don't have a case.
Yeah.
And moving to in-car cameras as well as body cameras, so you can get a wider view of a scene. Really what you get from the officers were the front, what they see, but they don't see the whole picture. So we really need this to keep up with the evidence and in court cases. And frankly, it's a liability saver for the town.
Yeah.
Someone makes a false complaint. I haven't seen one complaint where a video has been in place where the complainant has gone anywhere because it's usually a false complaint. So, and use of force situations and so forth. The kicker there, not only with the evidence and the liability savings, but it's also an officer safety issue. If we have an officer who won't answer a dispatcher because they're too busy, they're distracted, or they're focused, or they're just not in great radio communication, the dispatcher can log in and look through their camera real time and watch what they're doing to make sure they're okay. Why that's so important, not just for the officer safety, but the people in the back of the room that are sitting here in uniform can tell you when that officer's not answering the radio, their first thought is, oh my God, something's happening, and they race to that scene. So now you have another liability of a cruiser driving fast to get to help back up their fellow officer who they don't know if is okay or not. Thank God most of the time they are, but again, that's an officer or two now responding at high rates of speed through the town to get there. We're now with this program and we can log in and go, nope, they're fine. They're just sitting in their car filling out a ticket and they didn't hear you. So it's a lot more than just that officer safety, it's everybody's safety.
Thank you. And I think I have a question maybe for Gail, if it's okay, that line, the contracted services line that was.
Yeah, everybody has to. $39.
Right, but it was in the approved budget for 24 too, like it was.
Yeah, we literally only approved $39.
So
part of the correction that we had to make from going from 23 to 24 was we needed to come up with enough funding to fill that, which we did.
So, and even when, I mean, there's still obviously, contracted services has one of the biggest encumbered amounts from 23. So that probably was enough to cover the 24. I still would love a little more of a breakdown of this if and when it's reasonable, just in terms of like how, anyway, that's a general question that I'll leave for maybe when we get back to the town manager's budget. Chief, I think other question I have is just, I mean, I read your letter, but could you share a little bit more about why the restructuring, why the choice to restructure, like what?
Well, one of the things that I was asked to do when I got hired, or one of my primary responsibilities was to create a coalition and community outreach for the department. One way to do that is have an outreach division.
You were asked that by the administration?
No, yeah, I was advised when I got hired that one of my primary responsibilities was, because of my experience in Rutland, was to develop a community coalition and an outreach, a more of a community policing outreach portion of our department. So moving forward, I didn't want to come in here and say, hey, I'm looking for 5 new people to do this without having structure in place to support those people. So it was imperative that we move forward and have the 3rd division with the outreach commander without coming to you and saying, I need a 3rd commander, because frankly, we don't have the staffing. So we restructured the command staff instead of pulling people from the road.
And that's not a demotion in any way?
Nope.
There's and pay grade and everything is all.
Yeah, everything stayed the same except the title and some responsibilities.
I guess I was just, was a little taken aback, but I'm sure I can get on board. I think that'll do it for me.
Lanny?
Yeah, Chief, I didn't realize you were gonna come into this, but I'm gonna talk about the Celebrate or ask about Celebrate here, real quick, like. The numbers are very telling as far as that you presented, as far as the numbers. But what would be more telling for me is with the number of phones that you've analyzed, what are the percentage of cases that are able to be prosecuted successfully to an end of putting somebody away for a while so that we don't see them again?
Couldn't tell you. There's so much that goes into prosecution of a case outside of just the evidence and the collection of evidence. There's plea deals, there's side agreements, things that I can't predict or even control.
So we don't have a way to cost analyze this then to find out
no
the effectiveness of spending $30,000 to.
No. The only thing I can offer is if it was your child, what would you want? If all the evidence of that child exploitation or sexual activity is on that phone and we don't have the ability to download it, you lose any chance of a case.
Are there any statistics from other departments that you could point to that would
I can look for some from Grafton County where we have them done now and see what, I don't know if they can provide a successful prosecution rate based on cell phone downloads and the connection. I don't know.
To me, it's important to understand if the citizens of Hartford are being asked to pay for this, whether they're going to receive a result from paying for this, in the fact that they're going to get a child molester off the street, if they're going to get, this predator off of here, if they're going to be able to solve a shooting crime or a drug crime, is the cost they're paying in their taxes justifiable for what they're getting?
That's a very valid point. I don't know if you can put a price on a child sex assault. A victim of a crime, I think, deserves our most attention. All we can do is prep a case for trial. Probable cause is what we need, which is factual circumstances that would lead a prudent and reasonable person to believe a crime was committed or about to be committed. What we aim for is trial-ready cases, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the burden of proof in a courtroom. So the only way to get from probable cause for an arrest to an actually bulletproof case is to be able to do these kind of downloads and provide that graphic evidence, unfortunately, to help with these cases. And I think sometimes, Laney, what happens is instead of bringing a victim into court, they plea deal it out to avoid re-traumatizing the victim. So, I don't know how many go to court, but without it, there is no chance or a very slim chance. I don't know of any offender.
Justice served from the costs.
Yeah, I don't know of any offender who would consent to downloading his phone or her phone if the evidence on there of a crime is there. So it's a necessity. Again, we've dropped our numbers and we can look at it again and try to narrow it down even more. But the grant we're looking at is beneficial. If we can get it, it will drop it by $10,000 more.
Is this provided evidence to you that you passed on to like the state's attorney?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other piece to this too is that the state crime lab is no longer doing these, and if they take one, it's well over a year before we get the results back. We're sending them to Durgin County. They're finding some issues with doing that, and they're looking at taking just their own cases as well, and not doing these services for other agencies. So in that, which is why we're asking for it, because without it, we have no chance of some of these cases. Currently, we're under the graces of Grafton County doing the cases, doing the cell phone downloads for us.
Is this a service that we could charge other departments for the use of it, or if we didn't exceed our?
Some do. Lebanon does, I believe, right, Tom?
Lebanon, last time we asked Lebanon, it was $1,500 so month.
So we could potentially make some money off of this if we get the right package, is what we're.
I think you'd be looking at an unlimited package.
Right.
I believe the problem with that might be the cross-state evidentiary.
Yeah, as I wrote in my letter, we have a Vermont search warrant and a download's happening in New Hampshire. So there hasn't been currently any challenges, but the rumblings are out there that it could happen.
Right. Well, and I assume that Lebanon could have the same issue with that.
Exactly.
So I just don't think that we should rely on that as a revenue source. Let's say. I have another question, but Lana, I don't want to interrupt if you're still.
No, feel free.
Chief, just going back to the data analyst and community resource liaisons. So looking back through the numbers, I'm seeing the breakdown of the salary for these liaisons at approximately 50,000, 49,920 per year. So at 4, that's about 200, and the data analyst would then be at a higher rate plus benefits. So
Right.
one thing that I'm just a point of clarification underneath the letter from Colonel James Baker, JW Leadership Consulting.
Yep.
The following one, Bradley Goodhale. We have a packet here. Is this data from Rutland? Is that, and it's a sample of what?
The 4 slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a package from the current data crime analyst in Rutland, Nate Thibodeau.
Okay.
Again, that's 51 or 54 pages. I didn't want to send it all to you.
Right, but that's just a sampling of what we would, we would expect your department to be able to utilize.
Yes.
Data in this format.
Yes, and again, the goal would be for the outreach division to begin, or the department in general, to be holding either monthly or bi-monthly, every 2 weeks meetings.
Right.
Public meetings for transparency of data and sharing of data, not only with the public, but in citizens, but with partners that we partner, or partners that are in our coalition that we build. So when you're sitting in a room and you have a repeat address, let's say, which I'm not sure I gave you that kind of slide, but where we've been to 3 or more times in a 2-week period, that becomes a problem for the neighbors and for the person that we're responding to, because we may not be the perfect tool to be used in that situation, like a mental health. So then we would identify the mental health, social workers in the room and say, we need your help to fix this problem for our community, for our neighborhood, and for our department. It reduces the frustration of officers going back multiple times to the same address. If you haven't seen the videos online, there's many videos online where officers walk up to a door and say this stuff ends now, and go inside and bad things happen and departments get sued. So to reduce the frustration on our officers, to reduce the burden in our neighborhoods, and to give better outcomes for those that we serve, that we're not the best tool to go on a call, but we're the only ones called, like mental health or homelessness or drug addiction, alcoholism, various other things that we shouldn't be going on. We are not the best tool for a lot of this, but we're called because we're the only ones there 24/7. These individuals would respond. But again, in the room during these meetings, the professionals that are supposed to do this kind of work would be called out and say, hey, we need your help to fix this.
Right.
Help us fix it.
I have 2 follow-up questions, and they might just be rhetorical at this point. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but 2 things that are standing out. One is the on the call volumes here in Rutland City, which has a population of about 50% more than us, 15,000 or so. It looks like their call volume, their case volume is similar to ours. Is there something wrong in Hartford that we should be aware of, or is this
No, if you look at our call volume, a lot of it is non-criminal, but there's a fair amount of directed patrols for the schools because we don't have a school resource officer. So we do a lot of directed patrols at the schools to check on them daily. We do Navy Reserve Center, we check on that per an MOU we have signed with them. So there's directed patrols in ours as well, but the numbers are growing. Yeah,
I see. So
They also have a Project Vision in Rutland that might help reduce the number of their calls.
Right. Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing is the letter from Commander Matt Prouty. It's talking about just speaking in advocacy of the community resource specialist and how that's been a great addition to the city of Rutland. He talks about, since your retirement from Rutland City Police Department, they've added 2 more to have a total of 3 resource officers or resource specialists. Again, population of about 50% larger than ours. Obviously, I can't ask Commander Prouty myself, but do you feel like there's a greater need in Hartford for 4, or a greater need in Rutland that they haven't yet filled? I mean, they have 3, it seems to be working well. You're asking for 4 in a town 2/3 the size.
When I originally put that program together, I wanted 4, 1 for each shift, again, in the patrol division. The mayor approved 1, then he approved the second one before I left, but they hadn't hired him, and now they've approved 3 and have 3. They want more. Right now, they work out of the Project Vision Center, and they're, scattered over 7 days, but they're not 24/7. The burden is there. There are calls, I'm sure, that they don't go on because the response is it's not a police matter. We're shorthanded. They're running less officers than Hartford is. So I'm sure there's calls where they go, we can't send anybody. It's not a criminal matter, where these people would be more beneficial for them. Burlington's got many. Connie, remember how many Burlington's got? But they have a far more than Rutland, and they've been doing it for a lot longer. So this isn't just the Rutland, it's been going on across the state. It's it's basically reimagining what law enforcement looks like.
Sure.
Questions? Oh, sorry. go ahead.
When is the best opportunity for us to finalize? I mean, there's several outstanding pieces of this budget in particular.
I had the same question. I was gonna talk with Gail about it.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have some, like, finalizing the budget meetings. What do we need to be?
Thus far, the chief has already kind of suggested some changes he's willing to make. Maybe there's a way to incorporate that while still giving the select board an opportunity later to have their say on the new numbers from the police chief. Just one thought.
Say what you want to say.
I might have misunderstood, but I think that the changes that I've heard so far is just the changes that have happened in the last couple of days, that we need to update the budget book to reflect those changes in salaries and benefits. And then moving forward, we do have at least 2 working sessions after you've heard from everybody to make your changes that you would like to make. So I think leading up to that point, as we find other human errors that we have with the book, if we just keep updating them, so when you actually have those, when you start your 2 working sessions, that you have the accurate document in front of you.
Okay.
So because keeping that running tally, we know that potentially, that, you know, the police would like to add some additional positions. They're not in there.
Right.
What they're going to be.
Yeah.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I basically want to, like, just make sure we're clear on when we make the decisions about any of it. I mean, and including anything that's in the budget, I guess, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And
We have
those,
a couple other ones
the
too.
holidays, the 14 holidays will be.
That will be corrected as
through all-
well.
Yeah, because I think that was in a couple, at least in dispatch too. I don't know if it was in any other departments, but. Okay, so we'll.
I'll work on it.
Do we have questions before we go to the dispatch?
Oh, okay, sorry, just one more. Did the department ever pursue the flock cameras, or was that something that was requested last year as sort of a?
Yeah, I think that was discussed with whether it should be a flock camera now or Motorola, because we have Motorola at the police station.
Okay.
So the discussion was for like the park and ride, if it was a Motorola camera, it would sync in with ours. I'm not opposed to either, depending on what the town decides to go with. I think the flock camera provides a lot of options.
Yeah.
And I know Manchester, Vermont has them, and I've spoke to them, and they've had some really good success with it. Now, I believe Motorola can do similar stuff, Tom.
The Vigilante system we put in has a lot of the same AI features.
With the, like, plate recognition and everything?
Yeah, some of it's like red car involved in a crime and query stuff like that. Like, not so far down the LPR or like every rabbit hole, but like our current system we have do a lot of that. It like picks out, like, let's say the guy identifies a bicycle in a car. Now you can really kind of, I haven't, it's just that system just started, so we haven't really done a deep dive, but I think it can do a lot of the same things. I don't know, it would be like a seamless plug into like dispatch center. So it's all in one.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Shall we move to dispatch?
We can. I don't have the computer died, but I can read it.
Kim, are you able to put yours on?
What do you have for a computer?
Dell.
No, yeah, my Lenovo. I don't know if it works.
Was fully charged when I came in. I don't know why it died so quickly, but that's okay.
Lenovo might work. Try this.
It's a little pin.
Yeah. I don't know. Try it.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see this. Nope.
No?
No. Sorry, Lane.
Sorry. I tried.
Let me see if mine works. I've got to go.
Okay. Yeah, it's a flat pin. Small one like an apple.
Let's take a look.
I've got it.
Okay, let's just.
Never trust laptop batteries.
I'll go to the
Work.
tomorrow.
Work.
I think it might.
You got it up.
I'll
Charge
go
your
get it.
computer.
Charge the computer. Okay, so, I think we can go back one more slide. Is there one missing? Maybe go forward then.
Yeah.
This is just from the
That
agenda.
was now we're on the dispatch.
Yeah, he's probably gonna have to pull these up to do the
Yeah,
the accurate one.
Let's see, I think you got.
Have this slide, just the beginning slide, column numbers.
Go ahead, chief. Should
This
take
is
it
coming
over.
up slowly, but we'll be here.
Oh, yeah, we don't have that.
So
Oh, well,
we'll
the-
use the chief's presentation, I guess, when.
This is
computers
coming
come
up, so
back.
I can get it in
I'm
momentarily.
making people obnoxious with this scrolling. Okay. Stop.
Poster.
Yeah, I'm back up. I'm back. Did we get panelist again? Thank you. Okay, so the calls for service have increased, or are on the increase. We're at 16,764. Now this is all calls into the dispatch center, 911 and so forth. So the numbers are continuing to go up for our dispatch center. Yeah, that one didn't seem to be in yours.
Yeah.
Revenue. Contract services, 516,000, 210 was from the state. I believe that was 911, Scott, right? And then the cost from Hartford is 1,057,830. Oh.
Can you email this to us when you get done, chief?
Yeah.
It's mostly in the package, just that one slide. Just the one slide that's on.
I'd rather have the updated one.
So the increase, oops, we're on the wrong one. Hang on. Jump 2 ahead, 3 ahead. Okay, so the dispatch overview, this year's budget, current budget, 1,301,000. Proposed 1,764,502, the difference of 463,402. That includes a dispatch communications director, 10% of my salary, 10% of the administration salary, 9 full-time communication specialists, 1 vacant opening right now, and a communications information systems coordinator. Increases to the Spillman CAD system and a tower lease program, or tower lease of 36,000, and increased revenues are due to 911 rollover detail and a recalculation by the 911 board about how we get our refunds or our rebates. Other items that we've increased this year are funding for training and travel and some supervisory training for our dispatch staff. The wages are an increase of 251,677, and that's pretty much contractual obligations and so forth. That goes from 703,544 to 955,221. Again, it lists the different positions that covers below. The healthcare difference was 28,915. That was the increase for healthcare. Mostly insurance is again listed below, 14.2% increase health insurance, 4% increase in dental, and the retirement system, retiree healthcare. This one's pretty simple, and that's about it.
Can you just back to the overview slide, dispatch overview, that one? And the budget book, we've got 1.63 million, but that's saying 1.764. Why would those two be different, do you think?
Let me take a look.
Dispatch services total.
I have
Does
in
not
my
include
book-
like the tower lease and stuff, is that?
Well, my book shows 1,764,502.
Or does it?
Yeah. Town managers is 1,630,917. And the difference between the town.
Oh, I
managers
see, I'm
is-
sorry, it's the recommendation.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I'm
And the
looking at-
difference is that fourth console, which we asked for capital improvement reserve funds for, that's 133,000. So that's the difference in the town manager's recommendation in our proposed budget.
That's the department equipment line?
Yeah, if you look at the 10,271,331.
Yeah.
You'll notice that the fourth console is not in the town manager's recommendations. And that's something we had asked for reserve funds on. We currently get 20, we'd ask for an increase of 30 to give us 50 a year for 3 years to pay for that.
And so are we still putting some in reserve?
That was proposed. I don't know where the approval is on that. We'd ask for an increase from 20 to 30,000 or an additional 30,000 to make it 50,000 a year.
Is it 921, Jill? Is that where the reserves are?
Correct, 921, 271, 0100.
Say that one more time.
921, 271.
Okay.
0100.
Okay, so that's 50,000 in there, which the town manager is agreeing with there. Okay, so what we are looking at is likely to meet the town manager's recommended amount of the.
Right.
Okay. So 1.6 million, so we'll get 7.
The alternative is that you fund all of it this year so they can get the console now, and then you can reduce the funding back down to that. There's that option, and then also if you have, as it was discussed during CIP, there are other funding options that are available.
Yeah.
And as to these recommended reductions, it has nothing to do with the merits of the item. It's just where the fund's coming from. Yeah.
And that we've been putting reserves in that fund. So there is
some funding in there. Over the past few years, the police department and the dispatch department has been utilizing it, which is reduce the tax burden, but it is getting very low now. So there's not sufficient funding.
Oh, okay, so it's been being used, but not for a fourth console.
Correct.
I see. So that should be in our consideration too, if we want to, like, how urgent is this fourth console? Is it?
Well, we're looking at 3 years. We'd like to put it together and have it installed within 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
With the state's dispatch task force, is that what it's called? They're looking at regional dispatch, so we don't know where this is going to go. But we have an increase in requests to do dispatch service for other towns. So as that grows, we would need a fourth console to keep up.
Okay, I guess I'm still not clear on what, if we should just keep, if we should put 50,000 in reserve and not buy it now. But I guess that's up to us, I know, I don't have a.
That's up to you. You also have not made solid decisions from the meeting that you had in September.
CIP.
You have all of those.
So we're in
still on the
reserves.
table.
Okay.
which is
that project.
with
So
the end of the
town
budget,
manager removing
all the way
it
to the end.
From the operating. line
921271.
is the correct
Okay, so wait a
action.
minute.
Because
57.
Because she
Yeah.
put it in just in case.
Mhm.
Doesn't get it in one or the, he doesn't get it in one, he might not get it in another. So I think the way that it stands right now, it's an accurate statement, but as you move forward into your discussions, you should have that along with the other requests that you would also receive.
Thank you for that clarification, probably again, because I'm sure it doesn't always think in. Gambling.
Questions?
Just our dispatch service is amazing and impressive, and the number of communities that we serve and the number of calls you get. Thank you for taking such good care of everyone.
And bringing home some bacon.
Some revenue.
True.
I guess this is maybe more of a question for Gail. You know what, and it's certainly a much bigger conversation than this specific department. But on the one hand, the way we budget for big ticket items over years makes sense. And seems prudent. And then on the other hand, the longer it takes for us to save up, inflation and price changes get us. So we tend to see a higher final ticket item. Oh, is there a way to like do a better analysis on if it were we prioritized these items are this year across departments and we're making the purchase? Much less goes into reserves, much more goes into direct purchase. And then we're stacking items. Of course, we'd still probably want some measure of reserve for unanticipated changes, but
I think that's part of the goal of trying to move forward with the capital needs assessment or capital plan. To make that determination, because each department does an excellent job of maintaining their individual needs, but town-wide, we don't have that correlation to bring it all together, so every year we need to have $500,000 for this, or $700,000 versus, like for our debt payments, we have a schedule all together, we know what we need, when it's gonna drop off, when new ones come on. So I think that's a great question that you asked, and I believe that the town manager is trying to look for a different programming to make it all come together.
sure. Yeah, I just think it's also with like, even with our ARPA funds where we're getting, an interest rate from Mascom of 1.5 or 2% a year annually. I mean, inflation is down now to 3 or 4%, so it's still devaluing sitting in the bank, but last year when it was 8-9% inflation, it kind of hurts to see everyone putting so much effort into planning and budgeting and doing their best with the best pricing we have now, and then putting not just the departments, but the taxpayer in the position of 5 years down the road, we implemented a plan and executed on the plan faithfully, and to factors outside of our control, now we have to still raise the tax on citizens. It just, maybe that'd be something we
It's come
can.
up a lot, like, do you save or borrow, like, which one is more cost effective? And I do think that's what capital plan would really help us. like
And of
capital
course-
plan Policy.
And of course, debt will be a topic that the auditors discuss on the 28th.
Well, this is not even debt. This is just money that we're raising year over year through.
I'm just addressing Kim's point. That
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
reserves versus borrowing.
Sometimes if you've got to spend, $300,000, is it gonna cost you more if you put $50,000 a year away for 6 years? Or if you borrow $300,000 at X amount of interest rate, a bond for it, or that kind of thing.
Right.
Like, it's not necessarily just like adding $300,000 to the operating budget to have in the tax rate, but sometimes it's better, the things that we know are going to be ongoing capital expenses, equipment, things like, dump trucks and plows and fire trucks and that kind of thing. Like, we know we're gonna need it, so it does make sense to continuously put reserve in those things, but sometimes things come up where it's like, we need $300,000 now, or can it wait? Anyway,
Yeah.
it is a bigger discussion.
Yeah, right.
There's no one.
I think you missed my point, but it is a bigger discussion for us. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Chief. Thanks, everybody, for
I
coming
just
in.
want to make sure before we close it out, police and dispatch, the only open items that we have to follow up on are updating the salaries and benefits for the items that, chief.
Oh, I will point out that there were a list of items that the chief had in his budget that in response to email inquiry from Kim Souza has gone back and sharpened his pencil a bit. And I'd be happy to share those with you, Gail. So we can discuss whether those changes should be made now or left on the table for the end of the process discussion.
There were, it was when I was asking sort of about the celebrate custom, and then town manager responded to all of us with the answer to some questions, and then there were some other, like even, anyway, I'll let John share that with you.
Yeah, we can discuss
Okay,
that.
so there's the salaries, benefits, plus whatever other items, so.
And I mean, I think it would add to that list, those civilian employee option, you know, like whether or not to add the, what's the title, the data analyst
Community resource liaison.
and the resource liaison.
Yeah, so I have those, I
Okay.
just meant specifically for corrections in the book, so we're getting ready to give you your final draft.
Okay.
Or final working document, so start our discussion. Like it's on. Okay, just wanted to know if there were any other corrections.
You got the holiday, so.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right, well, we'll take a break and then we'll come back for policy on policy.
Oh, sorry. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, so quick question. We know how difficult it is to hire police staffing and officers, et cetera. And we know how important it is to have good relationship with our neighboring towns. So in light of that, the mutual aid that we provide to neighboring communities, is there a sort of a cap before we bill them on those services, or it's just unlimited hours based on the needs?
Referring to mutual aid with law enforcement, Dan?
Yes.
There are MOUs in place with like Lebanon, but that's on if we don't have the staff, we don't go, and if they don't have the staff, they don't come over, but it's not as prevalent as one would think.
Okay.
It's there, but no, there's not a lot of back and forth unless, I mean, obviously in emergency situations when we're yelling or they're yelling, we go, but it's not as much as you would think.
Great, thank you.
Can both of us cross each other's borders?
Yeah.
Great. All right, we'll see you back in, I don't know, 5.
Oh, it's hard.
Anna, are you there? He's on Zoom.
All right, everyone, we're back. Our next item is the policy on policies. And Ally has prepared a memo for everyone who's in the packet. So Ally, if you want to take it off, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we also have the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion Chair, Pat Attilio, here to offer some additional context and answer questions too. But I'll just talk through what's in our memo to refresh us, because this policy on policies and the policy template proposal, this recommendation was approved by the select board all the way back in October 2021. And I think just with, turnover of leadership, et cetera, just it was something that wasn't able to be implemented until we had more capacity to do so. So as a refresher, that recommendation was to create a policy on policies for all of our town policies, and compile a complete list of existing policies for all departments and adopt a digital policy storage system to improve the usability and meet accessibility requirements. So sort of how this came about was this committee, one of the things that they're charged with is to, with an equity lens, consider the impact of town policies and procedures and ordinances, and realizing that it's very hard to do that when you're not able to access all of the policies. And I think we've heard from community members like, oh, it was really hard for me to find the noise ordinance. I have no idea how to find that, kind of basic things around how to even access policies to the public. So ultimately, this effort being one to promote transparency and accessibility of our town ordinances and policies, and to maybe eventually be able to help us facilitate us reviewing it with an equity lens. And then also wanted to flag as part of our discussion whether or not we decide to make a formal motion on this tonight, that we did receive an email from Pat on October 20th, just also considering that there might be funding implications to identifying, scanning, converting policies to a template. Should we agree on a template? They suggested $5,000. That's just an estimate as to what that work could cost. So ultimately, what we're here to discuss is the proposed policy on policies, and that language, as well as the template, the idea being that any policies are conforming to a standard template. So for searchability, access, all of those things. And the town hall flagpole policy is just included in there in the proposed template as an example, so we could see how that might play out in practice if we were to adopt that template. And the other thing that I'll just throw out there that I realize is not in this memo is something that's come up, I think, both in select board meetings and in other meetings, is the potential, and maybe this is something down the line and not tonight, but if we want to make a concerted effort to be reviewing our policies and have ongoing support for that work, to consider, do we have a policy committee or a policy review committee? I know we have a lot of committees in town, so we'd want to be judicious about how we're thinking about that as a resource, but wanted to throw that out there too. Pat, I'm wondering if there's anything you want to add to that I didn't say?
No, I think your memorandum covered it pretty well, Ellie. There, necessarily itemized all the reasons why we're asking for this, but having it accessible, electronic form on the website, all the policies and ordinances that are in the town, and be able to know definitively that one you're looking at is the most current, because that's one issue we've seen is that I've gone to in the past and said, well, it could be over here. So definitive notion of what is the ordinance is important, and accessible, and then the owner, who's the owner of the policy. So that's why you see the template has a number of fields and some structure around it, so we capture all this information. The last time that policy was opened up, we looked at target date eventually for the next time it should be reviewed. So all this is a little more structured, but it doesn't exist today. Yeah, I think that's the essence.
And I would just note on in the memo, there's essentially 3 potential motions that we could make. We could adopt the policy tonight, we could adopt it and have direct John to begin transferring policies to the template, and we could also earmark some money, but we may want to wait for the town manager budget presentation for that one. So we do have a number of ways that we can proceed with this evening. Kim?
I guess one question I would have is, John, do you have any opinions about this?
I don't. In fact, when I was interviewed, I know Mike Hoyt asked me first, one of the things he'd like to see done is get our arms around what policies the town has adopted. Maybe that was because he had this in mind or for some other purpose, but I've put together a list in my office upstairs of all the town policies of which I am aware. Perhaps I need to talk with Lisa in the clerk's office. There might be some in musty old volumes that are even less active than the ones upstairs. But I think, yes, maybe to begin with a list of all of our policies, trying to find the most current versions of them. And then, yes, whether it's in-house or through some funded position to go about the task of putting them all online in the same kind of format makes good sense to me. Yeah.
That's great. I will note, so whether if the board decides to form a committee or something of that nature, I know that members of HCORE have volunteered to help do some of this work. Like if there's identified a process of literally just, scanning documents in order to be able to transfer the content of them, that kind of thing. Like it might even require contracting with someone to sort of assess what the project would entail and then implement, then actually doing the project. Like I think it's a pretty big project. In the last couple of years, I kept asking during the town clerk's budget if there were funds for digitization. I think I asked it again in just an email this year. And I don't think that was something that the clerk was part of their purview in terms of their job. But basically there's all these green books and things that are housed in the vault in the town clerk's office. And as someone who has personally tried to do some deed research, like the Laserfish thing is not ideal. Anyway, I think that there is, I hope that we will adopt the policy and the template, and that we do talk about it in the town manager's budget to add some funds for digitization of documents in whatever context, like whether it is for contracting a professional to come in and get us started or anything of that. But I did want to just reiterate that HCORE had also offered to volunteer what a policy committee could also assist with some of that legwork too.
Okay. Then?
Yeah, one of the things that concerns me about the whole discussion about policies is that we have policies, we have many policies in town of Hartford, and we're not following them, and we're not enforcing them. Okay, I mean, we have policies on the select board that we're not following and we're not enforcing. So the biggest concern I have is there is no teeth behind a policy. Policies mean nothing except the location where you can find something. What are we doing other than basically organizing our website with this? That's the biggest thing that I have a concern with. And I think that's great that we're going to reorganize our website, and I'm 100% behind that. Okay. But I'm just trying to wonder what else the goal is behind this, because if we have a policy that we write and adopt, but we lend no weight to that policy, nor do we have any enforcement for that policy, what is the goal of it?
Ally?
Rocket, did you have?
Yeah, Rocket, then Ally.
Yeah, I guess I could build off of what Lanny said and just say, I think that there is a great value to digitizing for
Oh, yeah.
policies and procedures, at least for it to be searchable, seems to be a good first step. I want to ask the rhetorical question of what does this have to do with racial equity versus equity at large? Of course, I think no one would be surprised that I would ask that question. And I do have a concern, two concerns with this. One is that it seems like I suspect that it's going to be vastly more expensive than $5,000 to try to digitize everything and in a searchable format. I think we've seen when we have PDFs that are not searchable, that's different than when it is. There's optical character recognition and it is searchable. So I think that there's going to be a two-part technological challenge. One is actually digitizing. The second is actually making it formatted, accessible. I think it's going to be, I guess that will be far in excess of $5,000. So I think that that's part one of the problem. And part two of the problem is policy on policies. Okay, but it also is applying to a policy on ordinances and a policy on procedures. And one of the things that sort of Lanny is touching on with the preponderance of policies, some of which, and processes,
Yeah.
some of which we have room to improve as a board and myself and all of us abiding by. And I think it's a good point because it's a little bit disrespectful to have laws that we don't enforce, right? It's disrespectful to a community where we're passing ordinances while we have dead ordinances in the books. I think that this could easily turn into this monumental challenge of how do we digitize everything when maybe what we should be doing is selectively choosing what should be digitized, what shouldn't, what is still relevant, what's not. And there are questions of like, for example, this new procedure that we've implemented in our public meetings of the fact that we have hybrid meetings. So the chair is reading this statement, and this is just to be in compliance. Do we put that in because that's a procedure? And that would be owned by the select board. I mean, that sounds like 20 or 30 minutes of someone's time, probably. I'm just wondering, are we going to pay for that? Is it volunteer time? If it's volunteer time, why should it be the racial equity committee versus something else? Although I understand it's a goodwill offer to volunteer. So I kind of worry that my concern, and I don't know if maybe anyone's thought through this, is that we crack this can of worms for good intent and for good purpose, which is to make these more accessible. But in doing that, we open like this gigantic field of, the problem is if we pass this policy on policies, we immediately will be out of compliance with this until we're in compliance. To get in compliance with this policy on policies is going to be a monumental task of doing things that might actually not be worthwhile of anyone's time because they're, are we getting too minute, right? Or every time we change a procedure, one department, it says in here, procedures, or was it procedures? Something about departments and how departmental policies and procedures are used to inform and provide direction for internal departmental management and operation of city departments. Probably should be town departments, but also we're talking about every time two departments make a verbal agreement to change procedure, we would be committing ourselves to somehow formalizing that through this document. I think it's a good intent, but I think it's a nightmare in execution.
One way to address this might be in baby steps. We could first assess what town policies we currently have after researching what's in my office, what Lana and Paula have pulled together for me, what I can glean from Gail's office, and then what might be in Lisa's office. We can give you a laundry list of the policies that we know of, and at least we could notify the public that they exist.
Yeah, and maybe also with that, and just to finish my comment, I do like the template. I do want to acknowledge that I know a lot of work has gone into this. I think that it's a good move. I mean, it's 2023. It's time we digitize. So I would, right. So, but I would be supportive of using this template, simply not mandating the policy and policies, but using the template and starting to say, as we work on different ordinances or policies, this like the things that are immediately relevant to our community will be popping up every week or even every day. At which point, I think those are things we can put into the queue of let's put this in the template, without necessarily anchoring ourselves to something as such as, what I think is burdensome and probably cumbersome as the mandate of this policy on policies.
Lenny?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back and, reiterate what Rocket says. I think this is a great thing to do, to digitize these things and be able to organize our website so somebody can find this stuff. But I do really wonder where we're headed with all this. And, when I look at policies, ordinances and stuff, I mean, we can clearly enforce ordinances. That's a legal thing, but policies are just simply words that are written on paper. There's nothing to that. If we're going to start out with trying to rewrite policies within the town of Hartford, well, hear me out. Okay, if we're we may not be rewriting them, but we're going to put them in this format. So, okay, they're going to be rewritten into this format of just policy and policies. So they will be rewritten into a new structure. Okay, if we're going to go about this type of a task, we should start from the top down and look at ourselves first. That's the thing that we need to change. I mean, leaders lead from the front. Okay, if we're going to be leaders in this town, we need to lead from the front, and we need to make sure that if we're going to start doing policies that we're going to abide by, we have to start at the select board, because we have policies in place right now that I said that we are not following. So the biggest thing that bothers me is that not that we're doing this, is that we're doing this in a constructive manner so that we can, I guess, for lack of a better term, I'm not sure what Michelle Bolesky uses for term, internal auditing or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what she says, but we have to do some sort of inward correction of ourselves before we can try to address the situation within the town of Hartford. But it's in a tough situation because I fully support getting something adopted for better clarity, but I'm really leery about where it's going to take us, as Rocket has stated, and especially when it comes to ordinances regarding that. I support what Rocket said. I'm not as eloquent as him, but it's just it's definitely think that we should work from our top down.
Pat, and then Michelle, if you have some.
Yeah. Have a comments. So this could turn out to be a large effort, but it's not something that would have to be a big bang. I think John mentioned earlier that we would define, starting point and incrementally work through perhaps the rule for applying the new procedures, the new templates, and the new updating process would be for any new policies or ordinances, or any ones that we know require a revision, and just take that as a first step, and then identify chunks and phase it out. It's going to take a while, perhaps, depending on how much budget resource we have to bring. The one thing I did want to mention, and you may not all be aware, is that the green book that Kim mentioned was digitized and is sitting in a large PDF that's 255 pages long. That is all probably all the Hartford ordinances as of a point in time. I think it was maybe 2013. And that's sitting in a PDF. So it's not in the template we like, but that would give us a version to start working with. And so we can take that as a baseline. And John can go through the process, and just staff can go through the process of figuring out what has changed and what has been added since that 2013 snapshot. And that would be a good thing to mark as a first wave to put into a new template. My next point, well, to Rocket's point about racial, what's this got to do with racial equity? It's got everything to do with all kinds of equity in this town. I mean, yes, we have our racial equity flag that we wave, but that doesn't stop us from trying to help other constituents. It's when we see the need that our focus is racial equity.
But don't you think it should be done under the appropriate flag?
Can I,
Yeah,
can
not
I,
necessarily.
Pat, is it okay if I just respond to that? Yeah, so I think also kind of tracing back in some context is that in order to be able to review any of our policies from a lens, an equity lens, or specifically a racial equity lens, we have to be able to actually know what they are, where they are. So I think like we're dialing it back to very much like this first step of, in order to be able to, because what the Racial Equity and Inclusion Committee has talked about is eventually, clearly, as we're discussing way down the line, because this could be a massive project, you know, would we hire someone specifically who has expertise in looking at the potential positive and negative impacts of policies on different communities? And so in order to do that, it's like we are definitely not there yet. And so this is an initial step to be able to actually see what all the information is. So then it could be at a place where someone could actually look at it and access it and be able to look at it from that lens. So we're like really drawing the curtain back to these very, very initial steps. Like we'd love to get to that place where we're looking at our policies through a lens of racial equity with someone who's very trained in that work, which I would certainly say I am not. But in order to do that, we simply don't know what is out there, and not even everyone in our community can access the policies.
Thank you, Ally. Pat?
I think the only other thing I want to say was that the updating of ordinances, enacting, amending, and removal of ordinances is dictated by Vermont statute. It's that core process of when an ordinance comes through. So there's some things we probably as a town we want to get around it about how often we review the processes. But that core of ordinances, it's important to point out. There is a pretty solid process around that now that's dictated by statute.
Mr. Will, here for Michelle?
And also Dan has his hand up.
Okay, well, let's do Dan and Michelle.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks. Well, I think that this is a huge undertaking for sure, but I think that, you know, as Lanny and Rocket have said, if we're not addressing these issues now, at least we're moving them forward. So if we put everything online where people can access it, we're making a good faith effort to move things forward. And if you think of it like in the same lens as like the cemeteries, this is going to fall on our plate. And if we agree to spend $5,000 a year to update the policies and put them into the format or whatever we do, we're at least acknowledging the fact that we have an issue here and we're addressing it the best we can without creating a huge burden to the taxpayers, but also allowing them to at least access the policies and see them online. So that's the first step forward. As this moves forward, we can continue to revise and massage the data to make it work for us in how we enforce it. You know, but I think it's something that we need to, first of all, acknowledge and own, and then we need to tackle the problem, even if just in baby steps. You know, we're not going to solve it overnight. We're not going to spend $100,000 doing it next year. But just looking at it and saying, yes, we need to do this. Let's take step one and see how that goes. We might need to revise it a little bit and say, that didn't work for this. We need to change how we do it, but at least move it forward so that out there people have access to it is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Dan. Well, let's hear from Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak. Some of you might know or might not know I was on the school board for 4 years. And that's when I first learned how important policies are and how important it is to have policies accessible to the public, to the townspeople. And Leanne, great points. We had monitoring reports from the school board to and so the superintendent would give us reports on different policies and have monitoring reports. And I still talk like I'm on the board, but they have a schedule of when those things happen. And yes, it took a lot of work, but I know for myself, my personal experience, I had some questions about policies and couldn't find them anywhere. And So I don't believe it's opening up a can of worms. I think it's the responsible thing to do for a town is to find the policies, have them available for the townspeople, and have, you know, of course, have them digitized. And yes, it is a big project. And that's why I think we've been kicking the can down the road since 2021 or longer. And it's already been approved. And I think what I'd like to hear is solutions and strategies on how to implement this, not roadblocks, because it's just not fair to the people that live in this town not to be able to access these policies. Lanny, I agree with you on ordinances. I don't know how they're enforced. And I've asked that question, especially in regards to some issues that have come up with the park and ride. And I think that's another discussion and a valid one. I also think that it would be great for the board to work together to look at their own procedures and policies and do a review at some point in the year to say, how are we doing? What's our report card as far as following these procedures and protocol? Do we need to do some work on it? And if we do, you know, what does that look like? You know, because every good organization has self-assessment, you know, and they create tools, and that just makes you better public servants, right? And so I appreciate this topic being, and I, you know, as an artist and somebody who is very left brain, I really, really, really think policies are important. And again, from my experience on the school board, appreciated the fact that they were there and that we talked about them and that we reviewed them. And I know town government is a little different, but I agree with our town manager, baby steps. First things first. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Michelle. Roger?
Michelle, I have a question for you. Can you give me, are you willing to share any specificity of policies you were looking for that you couldn't find?
Okay, she may be off soon.
Just following up on that. So Pat, I do have the copy of the Hartford Ordinances, the 255-page PDF you're talking about. And on page 1, the general provisions, chapter 1, section 1.4 talks about code of copy, a copy of code on file. Basically, that the clerk should have a copy and make it available as a public record to anybody. And it is available, digitized, and also searchable. And so I recognize that the policy on policies is to extend beyond that, but I guess like it's a little confusing to me if the entirety of the municipal code, which is huge, were to reformat that, or, you know, right here within personnel policies, there's 35 pages of personnel policies. So for each one of those to be put into a document like that, is that functionally or fundamentally different, more accessible than what we have? Like, I'm trying to figure out like what the specific pain points are. It's the same thing with racial equity, which I've talked to at length about, which I have a great stake in. I would love to see where the specific problems are and how we solve for that. And I guess I'm having a difficult time understanding that. I think that Dan makes a good point about moving forward and just taking baby steps and iterating and seeing where that goes. I think Lanny makes a good point that maybe we should take lead on, as a select board. And I also am very wary as a select board to be implementing things that we're now asking town staff at the departmental levels to, anytime they implement a new policy or procedure, to be also doing. I mean, I'm having a tough, to me that seems operational, and it seems very much like an executive decision that could change day to day depending on whether the procedure or policy internally works. And not so much relevant to the public, which would be more related to ordinances or policies adopted by the select board as a whole. So it's a little bit all confusing to me in my head. And I'm wondering that maybe if the best step would be to adopt the template and for the select board then to say, well, why don't we try it out and see as we format our work into this template, how that goes. But otherwise, it just seems like, I don't know, opening it all at once. Ellie?
Yeah, so I hear that, Rocket. And so, I mean, one of the things that I think this both the template itself and the policy on policies as proposed is, and yes, you know, policies are not ordinances. And so there can be the option of not following them, which is not ideal, but at least as these templates are proposed, it's offering some sort of method or attempted a method of accountability, which is really, I think, like what's at the heart of this, right? And what I know we all care about, which is, you know, like when was this policy approved? Who's the owner of the thing? Having accountability on when it gets updated, when it gets reviewed, which it seems like is not the case across the board with our policies. So it's those sorts of things to try to build in, albeit imperfectly, but some of those methods of accountability. And so based off of what I'm hearing, because it sounds like this conversation, you know, can and should continue, but for the purposes of tonight, is I would be interested in if the board is, or majority of the board is starting to work with, and actually I sort of started to do this work with the select board committee appointment policies, because I put it in this template just to see how it would work. So I would be delighted if we tried it with our own internal select board policies. I'd also be delighted knowing that this is a massive project, but it sounds like, John, you've already been starting to compile what you can. And so it seems like maybe we're not quite ready to adopt the policy on policies, but what we might be ready to do is to start working with the templates internally with select board policies. And then as time allows, amidst many things that you're working on in a busy budget season and all that town staff are holding, start to take this in chunks. And then maybe it's just continuing to get, you know, some updates on how things are going and where we might be ready to move in the next step. I don't know how that sounds to folks.
Well, the board, what's the pleasure here? We've got motions if we want. Sounds like we could also just internally decide to, you know, start with our stuff. I mean, it's whatever, you know, I'll take a motion.
Well, also because it might be beneficial, John, if you are willing to just share the proposed template with department heads and see if they had any modifications they wanted to make.
Good idea.
So basically, we don't have to necessarily even take a formal vote, but if the board is generally in support of asking the town manager to look at the next steps of moving policy, accessibility and organization and storage ahead, and then reporting back to us on what kind of progress could be made and also what needs there are to fulfill some beginning steps of the project, right? Like, so basically tell the town manager want to pursue this and ask him to come back and tell us what it would entail and how we might get there.
Lanny and then Rocket.
Yeah, I'm fully in support of this on the surface. I guess I'm reluctant to say go ahead with this until there's a plan in place on how, or not how, but on what we're going to attack first for policies. Because without a plan in place, it can get pretty willy-nilly. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, we got to start from the top down. That's how we restructure this thing. So I'm fully in support of the surface of this thing, but I just think there's so much more to put in place before we pull a trigger. And there's been a lot of discussion here that I've learned a lot from and gained a lot of insight from my other board members on, and I appreciate that. But I just don't think we're ready to dive headfirst in this without a plan.
What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Rocket.
Yeah, I guess, so as I hear everyone out, I'm thinking through this, it seems like there's two core problems that we're trying to solve. One is the digitization and the searchability, let's say, access and searchability. And the second is the compliance with policies that may or may not be being implemented. Like that's the point of the ownership. Is it still live, basically? So am I understanding that those are the two fundamental problems?
There's also the question, getting our arms around what the most current policy is to be able to point to definitively to the official.
Okay, so the most current version. So the most current version, search and access and enforcement or compliance, let's say. I think
what's the bit beyond the scope of this?
Yeah, I don't think we're asking for compliance at this point.
But if we,
I think I personally would be happy if we had, there should be an owner field in the template as the person responsible for that care and feeding of that ordinance or policy.
Right.
Position, it doesn't have to be individual, but it could be.
I guess
What can we come to consensus?
The thing is, like, I find myself, I could be supportive certainly of the general thrust of this, but I just think that it's too broad, especially the bullet points. I don't know, administrative policies and procedure, departmental policies and procedures. To me, it just seems like too big of a bite of the apple. So
Okay, we can do nothing on this, and John can continue to compile the policies, and we can come back and take this up at another time. I'm not convinced by any of the objections to this. I think if we don't do anything, we'll see it in 2025 when it comes up again. I mean, I don't think this is all that, I don't think this is like opening the door and like a parade of horribles. That's just my thought. I'd rather we just figure out what we want to do. And if that's just informally have John maybe think about it. What do what policies he has, and then we can adopt something. That's fine with me, whatever the board wants. Ally?
Well, and what I mentioned, what I had proposed earlier to that end rocket is, it sounds like we're not ready to adopt a policy on policies, and that is okay. But again, I would love some help with this. Whoever would want to support is that task of let's try to work with this template with the select board. We have been working towards an internal review of our work, and I think Mary, you were working on a code of conduct to be ready for the next election cycle, and we've long wanted to update our rules of procedure. We have some new appointment policies, committee appointment policies we have in place, so we could do that internally. To Lanny's point,
Committee appointment policy.
The committee, yeah.
The policy on appointments.
Appointment in the vacancy.
Okay, sorry. I'm still thinking about the overview of the committee. My apologies. I'm conflating two things.
So all of that to say, we could start with working with this template with our own select board policies. John can continue doing the great work that he's been doing, get feedback on the template from department heads, which I think is a great idea. So we can at least try this out.
It sounds reasonable.
I know you want to move on. Just to give you an example, right? The personnel policy for the town was last updated in like 2013. And then in May, I think, or recently this year, we updated the personnel policy to reflect the Juneteenth and changing Indigenous Peoples' Day from Columbus Day. The policy was not actually updated. The policy is still on there. The most current one is 2013. And when a new employee is hired, they get a piece of paper stuck in their physical copy of their personnel policy that includes the memo of the agenda from that meeting that says we added this holiday. So that's a perfect example of like an out-of-date policy that really should be accurate on the website.
sure, I guess to me, it sounds like it should just be updated then.
Yeah.
But then if we create a new template by which everything then has to go through, not only does that new thing.
I think we're in agreement on that can wait.
Right, okay. So, I mean, just so long as we're clear, because when you talk about departmental policies, how you put the Kubota away is a procedure, departmental procedure. Probably should not be something that we ask staff to do, right? And so long as we're just really clear on the scope, and Ellie, it sounds like we're on the same page about that. Then it
sounds like we've reached consensus that we will not do anything on this motion tonight, and that we will have John continue his good work, and we want to start putting these into templates to see what they look like. We can start with our own select board policies. Okay, everybody good? Okay. All right, our next item is flood resilience grant opportunity. And thanks, Pat, for coming by.
Thank you very much.
Hey, John, I'll turn it to you for this one, I think.
I think we have somebody here from Two Rivers who would like to address us.
Yeah, sure. Go right up and just introduce yourself.
Okay, I gotta see how loud this is gonna be. All right. So I'm Kevin Geiger. I'm the Director of Planning at the Two Rivers Adequacy Regional Commission, your regional planning commission. We work a lot with your town, a variety of things. Right now, of course, we're working on the plan and the zoning with Lori over there. But what we're seeking tonight is a letter of support for us to apply for a grant opportunity. Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission, our partner across the river, and us are going in for a grant under the U.S. Department of Transportation called Thriving Communities. And it's really to kind of connect transportation and other stuff. And it's quite a long and kind of complicated and messy thing. And are these anybody's keys?
I think it's for the lectern.
All right, good. But I'll read two little bits about that, about what it's hopefully going to do. And it's to advance mobility access, climate resilience, equitable community development, and healthy communities is one thing, and then support pre-development planning and scoping of projects that coordinate transportation with other land use, housing, and infrastructure development. That gives you a little bit of idea of what it's about. Big points from your point of view, I'd imagine, is we're not asking you for any money. We're asking you for a letter of support where we go and get money and then hopefully get a person who then helps you get more money. That's the chessboard move of all that type of thing out there. For those of you who deal with Rita Cito in our office, who's our transportation planner, who does an amazing job, it would be to do more of that, but also to broaden out those transportation things, to look at things that aren't traditionally transportation, but are related to transportation. So glad to have any questions. And we supplied John a draft letters.
Questions?
Well, yeah, just traditionally, there's been some tension between Two Rivers, Ottaquiche, because of what they will allow for development in the town of Hartford. So I guess my biggest concern is to make sure that if we endorse this, we're not giving up local control on anything, because we've just had so much local control on things being taken away from us to be able to grow our town. I'm thinking of a development out on Exit 1. That's the biggest thing that concerns me about this.
Yeah.
So explain to me what our endorsing this will do positively for the town, and conversely, how it may affect us negatively, if at all.
Okay, I don't think that this project is related to those matters.
I understand that,
but so for example, we have existing funding from the state through our transportation planning initiative to work with towns on a variety of transportation stuff. But that money is not an ending. And so if towns come to us and want us to do more crosswalks, or think about another transit stop, or how does transportation facilities or services relate to seniors or something, there's only so much bandwidth we can have in that right now. This would give us more bandwidth to do those type of projects.
But if you're going to tell us that we have to subscribe to this type of sidewalk and these standards of sidewalk, that's taking away local control. There are certain standards that you have to have.
Yeah,
but if you're making
there are
standards,
sidewalk standards that we don't create, like AASHTO creates and other things like that.
Okay, so there's not going to be no more requirements for the town then?
No,
Okay.
I mean, there's something called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the
I understand.
TCD,
Yeah.
that, covers a lot of things. Those things just come from on high.
Any other questions? Mary?
Just a quick one, and I'm reading this letter over. I wanted to know how some of these things that you just talked about relate to flood resilience, or are they just the opportunities that you're talking about?
So regarding flood resilience, I would say USDOT is kind of woken up on the relationship between transportation facilities and flood resilience. And so, are the bridges big enough? Are the culverts big enough? Are things washing out and then sticking into some other place down over here and causing flooding? So that, I would say, is the main connection between transportation infrastructure and flood resilience. There are other climate resilience things that are not just flooding. So for example, shading parking lots, could come under this thing, or other stuff that has to do with heat preparedness, which we work with the town on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ally?
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, I just point out the letter.
Yes,
in the
I've made
packet
that
says town of
change.
Rochester.
Rochester has been changed to Hartford.
Oh, excellent, good. I
All right.
did change that.
Oh, so.
We have a motion from Ally.
Great. All right, Mr. Chair, I move that the select board authorize the town manager to sign a letter expressing the town's support for grant proposal from the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission and supported by the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission entitled Flood Resilient and Equitable Transportation Infrastructure for New Hampshire and Vermont.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Dan says yes.
Unanimous? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right.
This will be in your email in the morning.
Excellent. The next item is the renewal of Evergreen certification of approved location. That's the salvage yard.
Yes.
Anyone, John? Is that-
Every 5 years, there's a requirement that when the state approves a renewal of a license to operate a salvage yard, that the local municipality also has an opportunity to weigh in. I've spoken to staff. They recall no recent events of any kind during this last 5 years that would in any way cause them concern about the select board approving our 5-year renewal. And I've also invited the attorney, Mr. Schuster, to be here in case there's any questions about the application that his client is submitting.
Are there any questions on this one? Lanny?
The only concern I have, and I don't know if it's addressed here or not, is stormwater runoff from the site. Understanding it's a salvage yard and there's no way to know what you're going to get from things that are brought into a salvage yard. Do they contain the runoff from stormwater runoff, or does it end up going down to the Connecticut River?
No, there's a railroad between them and the river, plus there's a concrete barrier where materials get dumped, so there is a protection, so it doesn't go through the river. It did receive planning commission approval for its layout, which included stormwater and topography. I don't have those plans, but it had the contours.
That's fine. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we have a proposed motion. Mayor?
I move that the select board sign a certificate of approval for location of a salvage yard supplied by legal counsel of Judith Bellier and Evergreen Recycling Incorporated regarding a parcel located at the end of A Street in Wilder within an industrial commercial zoning district.
I will second.
We have a second from Ally. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Dan says yes.
Okay.
I gather.
Thank you for coming.
I gather we've already harvested signatures, so you're all set.
Okay.
All right, our next item is the ratification of out-of-grade pay agreements. Just to go back to the history, we received a open meeting law complaint that we did not vote on that by roll as required. We acknowledged that on our October 31st meeting. Since then, we've been reading the script to start each meeting, and we've been doing votes by roll when it's not unanimous. And so what this would do basically is just to be on the safe side to ratify the pay out of grade agreement that we initially voted on back whenever it was, a few meetings ago.
19.
It's 19.
I think so.
So
Mr. Chair, on that,
Yeah.
that was the weekend. I think I missed that vote.
Yeah.
That's why I know that date. So I'm gonna abstain from this one. Or should I support it?
it's up to you.
Well, I guess
We're
I-
going back to ratify something just to make sure that there's no problems with it. And also this is as part of our cure for the complaint of the open meeting law violation.
I'm happy to support it.
So either way. I believe it was.
Two.
2 months.
Okay.
Lanny?
Yeah, can you, for myself and for those listening audience, explain what a ratification of something is, please, from a standpoint of this vote?
Well, we voted it initially and it wasn't done by roll call as it was supposed to be. So one of the options that we have, just to be on the safe side, is to go back and basically give our approval and do it by voting the way that's required under the law.
And where does somebody find a document that shows this $30 per hour and $25 per hour?
Well, I believe the payout of grade agreements on our select board meetings page. It doesn't mention the actual dollar amount, but we have provided that to people who have asked. And this motion also mentions it in there. That's an additional 25 an hour for Paula, an additional 30 for Gail. We also provided numbers that Kim read at the last meeting about how much it's cost us since it began and how much we paid MRI for similar services in the past.
So my concern is that if we're ratifying something that took place, there was never anything for paperwork that stated that this was going to happen. So we're ratifying something that never took place on paper.
I don't
So
understand.
we have
what that
documentation.
means. I think we did vote that out, didn't we?
There was never any vote on that. The only
I'm
vote
sorry,
that was
on
onboarding.
the only vote that was taken was on this.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no documentation as far as monetary reimbursement on that page.
Well, why does there have to be? We gave that information out and we're mentioning it in this motion as well. I mean, this is just to say we're keeping you on at the grade that they've been earning since last October.
I think it would be cleaner if we were to make a motion that we were going to pay Gal Alstrop and Paula Minalti the rate we're going to be retroactive to the date in question, because that would clarify the fact that we're doing a vote on something that is going to happen. All right.
It's already happening.
Yeah, I don't understand.
But we never voted. There was never a vote to give them the increase in money. There was a vote to adopt the out of grade agreement.
But the understanding that
But
they
the out of grade
continue to
agreement.
be paid. The
No,
service out of grade agreement means they're getting paid more.
There's no,
than they
there's no,
normally would.
but there's no documentation to say what they are. I'm trying to save us from further embarrassment of violating lack of transparency here. Why I'm trying to do this is just to say that we can make a vote to make it retroactive too, and that will cover everything. Right now, I mean, I took an oath when I joined the select board. My oath that I took on the select board says that I will not violate the Constitution of the United States or the laws of the state of Vermont. To me, if I voted yes on this, it's going to perjure myself.
What is
Because-
the proposed language that you are?
Because if you vote on something that never actually shows up on documentation, there's no way for you to document on October 19th to September 19th.
So to Rocco's question, then Lanny, how would you revise this motion to, what language would you propose to make it feel?
Retroactive to,
And can you, like, where would you say that here?
retroactive to October 2nd, 2023.
Where would you place that?
Would you like to make
I
a motion?
I have a comment.
Yeah, John.
If you vote to make an action retroactive, that strikes me as completely different than ratifying something you've already done. And then the lack of putting a retroactive motion on the agenda could generate more argument in the future about whether we're being transparent and open.
But when somebody tries to find a document that says back on September 19th, we signed off that we were gonna award $30 and $25. They're not gonna find anything.
We only authorized the chair to sign a service out of grade agreement. We didn't say,
Right, you only authorized him to sign this.
Yeah.
You didn't authorize him to increase the funds.
Uh,
We never authorized the chair to pay the $25 and $35. And I'm trying to work and make sure that we're doing this the correct way. Don't say this.
From John, this is not the correct way to do a retroactive motion.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Ally first.
Oh, I was gonna just make a motion and then folks can vote on it, yes or no, but go ahead, Kim.
well, I wonder if we do include in this motion, I mean, it does say.
Yeah, it says
For a
the
2-month period
amounts, yeah.
beginning October, so we could just add the word retroactive beginning October 2nd, 2023.
But that's not what was warned.
This wasn't warned at all. There wasn't a proposed motion in the agenda for tonight. It was just, there was an item that was warned that we were gonna ratify it, but it didn't have a memo with it.
Ally?
So I'm hearing from our town manager, and I would agree that adding in the word retroactive could bring up some more complications. I feel aligned with the language saying for a 2-month period beginning October 2nd. I think we're very clear in this motion. So I'm going to make the motion. Folks can vote yay or nay, and here we go.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, in view of concerns raised about compliance with Vermont's open meeting law, I move that the select board ratify a prior action taken by the select board on September 19th, 2023 to award the finance director an additional $30 per hour and the HR director an additional $25 per hour based on a 40-hour work week for a 2-month period beginning October 2nd, 2023 to provide onboarding support for Hartford's new town manager, with such funding to come from the town manager's budget.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second from Mary. Excuse me, discussion? Lanny?
Yeah, I firmly believe that unless you can pull up a document, onboarding and service out of grade agreement that says that we decided to do that on that date, that we're not following the proper procedures to do this. And I cannot believe that this is the best course of action. I also do question whether we as a select board have the ability to do this based on our charter.
Any other discussion? Dan?
Yes, I just want to thank Gail and Paula for their service to us to get us through this difficult time. And this is a technicality that they should not be raked over the coals for. I think we've sort of sought all the opinions we can get, and I think this is the best decision, and we have legitimacy to move forward. So
nobody's breaking Gail and
Thank
Paula.
you, Dan.
Nobody's
Rocket?
breaking Gail and Paula.
I do wish that we had put the numbers in this document, but I'm supportive of this. We gotta just move on, and we're trying our best. You know,
Okay.
we are trying our best, and I appreciate the efforts of not just Gail and Paula, them, of course, but everyone here. And we're to the citizenry, we're not trying to pull a fast one. We're really just working our way through this. So.
Okay, and I will remind everyone, the original complaint that we're seeking to fix here was not voting by roll, not that it didn't include any money in that stuff. All right, I'll call the roll. Lanny?
No.
Rocket?
Aye.
Ally?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
I will vote aye. All right, so our next and final agenda item here is the snow and ice removal. John?
I believe we've got Brian
Sorry, what?
Gazda.
Who?
Heidi.
Heidi?
And then we'll get to. Oh. Go ahead, Heidi.
Heidi Duto, Hartford, Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just so that Hartford residents are aware, I am the one that filed the open meeting law violation. And just so that everyone is aware that I am not completely resolved in that open meeting law violation. I do not believe that you actually have complied with all of my recommendations to complete that. I think that you have stated that you will do roll call, but I don't completely believe that you answered all of my recommendations in my open meeting law violation. So therefore, I actually am requesting that I have that letter that you just had up in your hand sent to me via email, please.
Sure, it's a public document.
I also do believe that you all took an oath of office when you were voted in. And I think that almost every single one of you have actually violated your oath of office. So I will be emailing you your oath of office, and I would like you to actually review it.
Not all of us.
She said almost, Lanny.
It's a big claim.
Anything more, Heidi?
There are rules and regulations of the select board, and I think there are a lot of rules and regulations being violated also. I'm going to actually get John involved with this because I think even though he's your employee, he has a lot of good points. I think he is going to be a benefit to Hartford if he is allowed to do the job. I think he has been a service to Hartford in the short amount of time that he's been here. I do not believe that he has been onboarded in the best way possible. I think giving the town of Hartford residents a 2-day notice to his welcoming meeting, his welcoming
Reception
was a poor service to him. I think not having his information up online is a poor disservice to this man. I think every single one of you or most of you could do much better. And this is what I have to say. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. All right, snow and ice, winter snow and ice bid award. John.
I think Brian Gazda gets the award for hanging out on Zoom.
Yeah.
And he's here to join us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, this is the annual award for snow and ice removal for 4 parcels within the town. Town Hall, the South Main Street parking lot area, which is under construction. Then the sidewalks by the VFW, the Bugby Center, and then also that we take care of the parking lot at the Queechee Visitor Center. So Jeremy, him and I worked together on the RFP. We put it out. As you can see, we had 3 respondents to it. I highlighted, as you can see, the numbers are sort of all over the place, depending on what they were looking to do. But it's our recommendation that Kurtz Excavating came in with the most reasonable bid, and they provided us a list of equipment, and we have experience with Kurtz, and our recommendation is to award this bid to them.
Questions for Brian? Okay, well, we'll take a motion. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board authorize the Director of Public Works to enter into service agreement with Kurtz Excavating for the removal of snow and ice per Kurtz bid proposal dated October 20, 2023.
I have a second.
We have a second from Rocket. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Got Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, so now we go to commission reports. Kim, you got anything?
Can you start at the other end? I'll be right with you.
Lanny, do you have anything?
No.
Lanny's got none. Rocket.
I do. Town and school meeting committee met, and they had some comments on the charter, which will come up at another point. Basically, they wanted, they felt like they had been cut out of the charter committee process, or they didn't. They want another round to be able to give feedback.
Sure.
They felt like broadly the charter could be simplified, and then also that there are too many specific like rules around the town and school meeting process, you know.
Oh, okay.
And part of which is like, and they also felt like their terms are misaligned because some of the terms end in coming months prior to April 1st, you know, prior to the day itself. So we felt like it would be better to have committee memberships start and end on April 1st, which makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Ellie?
Yes, Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion just wanted to thank Chief Sheldon, who visited the last committee meeting to offer an overview of the police department and some key pieces of his vision and strategy for the police department's work. Resilient Hartford will be planning a community discussion about the future of the Clifford Park Food Forest and Abenaki Garden at the West Hartford Library sometime in the first half of December. So we'll keep you updated on that. There is one committee vacancy in Resilient Hartford, one committee vacancy on H. Corey, and 2 committee vacancies on Hartford Committee on Housing and Homelessness.
Thank you, Ally. Mary?
Yes, Hartford Conservation Commission. We had a guest at our last meeting, Holly Henderson from Quechee, a wildlife biologist and relatively new resident to the town of Hartford. And in addition to the fact that we have a full membership at this moment, she volunteered her skills in her area and expertise while raising 2 very young children. Other business included the Conservation Commission's renewed support for speakers and educational events scheduled through the year for the grassroots salamander team under Ben Fletcher's guidance. Discussion revolved around a mid-February, around February 15th, 6:30 p.m. conservation-oriented event regarding citizen science, nature, and stewardship with invitations to many groups involved in this area of interest: VINS, VCE, Tree Board, Climate Action, UVMBA, Garden Club, Connecticut River Watershed Council, Resilient Hartford, Salamander Team, etc. Reminders will go out also that on May 18th, there will be a workshop, workday event to identify invasive plants and remove them at Hurricane Forest. Other items of discussion included the budget, extending the length of the agreement with UVMBA, the Polar Express and Rotary, painting boundary markers, and Route 5 bike corridor, among others.
Thank you, Mary. Dan?
Yes, I want to thank our veterans for their service, and I also want to remind boards, commissions, and subcommittees to submit any requests they have for funding to us by, and I forgot the date, Mike, what is it?
This week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Kim?
Planning Commission met last night with a massive agenda. 4 of the applications for a big housing development proposal were continued to December 4th. So those were not heard. The Black Rock Investments Project. Site development plan for a multi-unit property on Hillcrest Terrace was approved with conditions by the commission. Application for a subdivision on Depot Street was approved in Wilder. Site development plan amendment to allow Twin Pines temporary construction access on Goudreau Street was approved with conditions. And a site development plan for Northern Stage for a multi-unit development on Gate Street was approved with conditions. And then the application for site development plan for the Craft Studies Haven Emergency Shelter Project on North Main Street was continued to December 18th. And there's a million details, so if people are interested, they can be found in the meeting minutes of the November 13th Planning Commission meeting, which is located on the Agenda Center. The Agenda Center on the town website.
Thanks, Dan. I don't have anything, so we'll move to the consent agenda. Motion.
Do that. Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve payroll ending November 11, 2023, the AP manifests of November 10th and November 16th, 2023, and approve meeting minutes of October 31st and November 7th, 2023.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Mary will second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
I'm sorry. Did you say yes? Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second.
I will second.
Ally will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. And says yes. It's a second. Aye. You have all your signatures, Nina?
Do you have all your signatures, I believe?
Yes.
Okay.